fun to be here. It really is, folks. Ladies and gentlemen, let me get the formalities out of the way. Welcome to Indianapolis for our 152nd NRA annual meetings and exhibits, as well as the NRA ILA Leadership Forum. For me, and I think a lot of folks, this is, I can't say it's the most exciting part of the week that we've got here, but it is a great time with some folks that really impact our lives all over this country. Some of it is local, some of it it's on the national level, and we get to hear them in a setting where it's just different. I listen to a lot of folks that are in office and are running for office, but in this particular forum, there's something about it that's different. Perhaps it's the fact that they know they're here with thousands of folks that are like-minded on so very, very many issues. But again, let's get this show on the road, as the old saying goes. To begin the program, please stand with me and join in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, folks. Hang on a second, folks. If you would, please remain standing. We have a local Indianapolis opera soprano that's going to perform the national anthem for us. And first of all, let me tell you her name, and I'll go ahead and answer the question that you're going to be asking. Her name is Brooke Haggard, and no, she's not kin to Earl, but she is here to perform for us. Brooke, thank you, ma'am.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleam, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streamed, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you, Brooke. I was afraid I'd already worn out my welcome here and they were going to take me off the stage. Folks, it's a great opportunity for me to be able to introduce Wayne LaPierre to the crowd. Not that Wayne needs any introduction, but I've known Wayne for the 22 years I've been on the board of directors. I've known him pretty closely. I've known him for many more years than that, since he's been fighting for us for 40 years. But since 2019, when I was first elected as an officer of the NRA, I had a chance to work with Wayne on almost a daily basis. And one of the things that always impresses me in the relationship that we have with Wayne and what he's done for the Second Amendment, for the NRA, and certainly not only for the millions of NRA members, but for the hundreds of millions, 150 million to be exact, American gun owners. I got a chance to look around Indianapolis a little bit, not as much as I would like, but I saw the War Memorial. And I can honestly say, and this, I'm not just saying this because I happen to be standing in Indianapolis, it is the most impressive war memorial I think I've ever seen. I got to see it both from the ground level and from our hotel room, where you could really get a better panoramic picture of just what it really looks like. And if I have any of my fellow native Texans here, I'm glad you drove down here, folks, or up here. You've probably heard me say this before, and those of you who have, please bear with me for a moment, if you will. My heroes have always been the 185 men that defended the Alamo. They knew that they were going to die. They knew that they were trading their lives for 13 days for Sam Houston to put a ragtag volunteer army together and win freedom and independence for what became the Republic of Texas. The men stood on the wall for 3 assaults. Now, the only thing inside the wall at the Alamo, a couple of the movies are fairly accurate about it. Yeah, there's the chapel, the Alamo Chapel, and that's what people tend to remember. It was a little bit more than that, but precious little. But there's another wall. And there are men on that wall, and there are women on that wall. And inside that wall is not an Alamo Chapel, though that is near and dear to most Texans. Inside that wall is freedom. Inside that wall are our families. Inside that wall is the ability to not only enjoy firearms, and I certainly do. I'm a collector, a competitive shooter, a hunter. I love using firearms for self-defense. But I've said time and time again, the highest use for a firearm, in my opinion, and I dare say in yours as well, is the protection of innocent life. That too is inside that wall. For 40 years, taking all the arrows, insults, and attacks that one man should never have to take, has been Wayne LaPierre. He's been on that wall with countless other folks, many of whom are sitting right here now. The difference is, the wall at the Alamo bought time, 13 days to be exact, and it ultimately led to the Battle of San Jacinto, which gained Texas's freedom. Sadly, the wall I'm talking about now that protects our freedom will never see an end. The sad truth is, there always needs to be new folks to climb up on that wall and fight. Folks, my dad was a World War II combat vet, and he taught me from a very early age. We tend to throw around the word friend and call people friends a bit too often. More often than not, they're really acquaintances, perhaps even people that share the same love and desires. But the true friend is going to be there for you no matter what they have to face. I can honestly say Wayne LaPierre is our friend, not just mine, yours as well. Folks, please help me give a warm Indiana welcome to your friend and mine, Wayne LaPierre, Executive Vice President of the NRA.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Charles, and what a great NRA president we have. Welcome all of you, and thank you very much. Believe it or not, this is my 45th year with the National Rifle Association. You know, if I ever write a book about my experiences with the NRA, I think I'll call it, When You Fight Like Hell for Freedom, You Get More of It. Because that's how it really works, and you all know that. Like here in Indiana, law-abiding gun owners no longer have to get government permission to carry a firearm for self-defense. It's called constitutional carry, and Hoosiers have it because NRA members fought like hell for freedom and got more of it. In fact, NRA members have liberated more than half the nation now with constitutional carry. But we're not stopping until it's the law of the land in all of the land. I promise you that. And I know we'll get there because I've watched you, NRA members, fight like hell for freedom and get more of it and win over and over and over again. You, teachers, police officers, you lawyers and cashiers, electricians, nurses, surgeons, code writers, and truck drivers. You, moms and dads, educating your kids about freedom every day. You, Democrats, Republicans, and independents. You young hunters and old collectors. You paper punchers and safety instructors. You, men and women of the NRA, you fight like hell for freedom and you get more of it. You don't need, and I know y'all know this, you don't need government to tell you the sky is blue, water's wet, or that you have the God-given right to self-defense. Our founding fathers said the Second Amendment freedom arrived the day you were born, and it shall not be infringed. You know, the ruling class, they hate that. They're up there right now. You are who they fly over, and who they look down on, and who they write off. Well, I'll tell you something. That's a big mistake. I don't care how many billionaires, TikTok stars, or Hollywood airheads they've got. Hear this. Gun-hating politicians should never go to bed unafraid of what this association and all of our millions of members can do to their political careers. Because you fight like hell for freedom and you get more of it. One member at a time, one $45 membership at a time, one doorbell, one rally, one election, one vote at a time. You show up, you stand on principle, you fight and you win. So what do you say? Let's fight like hell for freedom and let's get more of it. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'll tell you, we do it all together. That's how it gets done, so thank you. The last time we were here in Indianapolis, our next speaker stood on this very stage and signed legislation to improve your right to self-defense. But he didn't stop there. Last year, he signed legislation that says law-abiding gun owners can exercise their right to carry without government approval. It's called constitutional carry, and thanks to his leadership, the right to keep and bear arms is alive and well in Indiana. Ladies and gentlemen, please give me a warm Hoosier welcome to your governor, Eric Holcomb.
All right. Thank you, and thank you, Wayne. Thank you all for being here, for carving out time for this very important cause that we all share and keep so close to us. Each time that I've had the absolute privilege of addressing you, this body, I think maybe my beautiful bride Janet should have been the one to have the invitation to stand before you. Some of you, sounds like you know her. After all, she was just down the street earlier today hosting the Women's Leadership Forum luncheon, as she has done in years past. And for the record, we're both NRA lifetime members. But she's the certified NRA pistol instructor who hunts wild boar hanging from a helicopter and dolls sheep up in the cold, rainy Yukon some 200 yards away because she can do a great stalk. Look at me, I'm proof. And she hunts elk outside of Trinidad and antelope with her friend, the First Lady of Wyoming, and just last week rode deer east of Barcelona, Spain. And there is no Barcelona, Spain in the state of Indiana, by the way. I asked her, is there not enough deer in North or South America that you have to go to Europe to bring one home? And I'm guessing you're thinking what I learned long ago. Since we don't argue, I sleep better than anyone on planet Earth. But let me just say, and I can, for both Janet and myself, if you've traveled here from across state lines, welcome to Indiana. We are known as the crossroads of America and the heart of the heartland. And I think this week you're going to see, especially this weekend, you're going to see exactly why we have acquired that reputation. So if you'll permit me very quickly, a shameless plug, or maybe several for that matter. If perhaps you flew in from somewhere else, you came through our airport, #1 ranked airport in North America the last 10 straight years, or if you drove here, you might have noticed some construction out there, these orange cones and barrels that look like our new official state flower because they're sprouting up everywhere. That's all part of our #1 ranked in the nation infrastructure program, fully funded, not debt financed, by the way. And I realize I've got some governors that are following me, so they're going to have some #1 rankings too, but you see, here in Indiana, as my predecessor Mike Pence can attest to, and the state legislators that serve in our Indiana General Assembly, they can attest to this as well. We actually balance our budgets every year. We cut taxes, and then we send the excesses back to taxpayers by way of a budget formula. The fact is, we already have low taxes, and they're getting lower right now as we all gather. Our high quality of place is getting higher. That's only one of the reasons why Indiana was ranked the #1 state in the nation to start a business, according to Forbes. And that should probably resonate in this hall, knowing there's a lot of business owners among us. And you're in a state where we make it our business to help you as sportsmen or collectors. We help make your dreams come true with an abundance of outdoor recreational opportunities that I'm sure our Indiana Department of Natural Resources can explain more to you about at a booth in the halls down the way here. We're proud to be the home to the NRA's National Marksmanship Competition Center down at Camp Atterbury that attracts civilian and law enforcement and military competitors alike. In 2002, we hosted the prestigious Pershing match. In 2024, we'll host the World Shooting Sport Championship. So I hope you all come back now, next April, to see the most skilled shooters in the world in action right here in Indiana. And speaking of that, you're in a state that couldn't be, as my two predecessors at this podium just articulated, You're in a state that couldn't be more grateful for our uniformed heroes who keep our nation's flag and all it represents flying high over this land of the free only because of their bravery. You were surrounded by patriots, not just in this hall, but border to border in the state of Indiana. And yes, we fully exercise our constitutional rights. We put our money where our mouth is, and we invest in those who protect them and our laws and our safety. Ladies and gentlemen, you won't find a place in America more supportive of our Second Amendment than here in Indiana. And one more thing, call me biased, but you simply won't find a state that rolls out the welcome mat quite like we do. It's in our DNA. We know how to go big. After all, we host the biggest annual single-day sporting event on planet Earth. It's called the Indy 500. 300,000 of our closest friends descend upon that track. That's just inside, by the way. If you haven't been on that race, put it on your bucket list. You've got an invitation from me. I promise you, you'll be glad you attended. We even hosted all 68 teams for the NCAA March Madness a couple years ago. We've hosted a Super Bowl. We've hosted more college basketball and football national championships than I can count. So no matter how long you've been here or back here on Hoosier soil, I hope you will consider yourself home. I hope you will consider yourself an honorary Hoosier. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for gathering here in Indiana. And thank you for standing strong on this side of freedom, on this side of the wall. May the good Lord continue to bless our great nation and our state and each and every one of your lives and livelihoods. God bless.
Lower, other way. That's good.
Ladies and gentlemen, the 48th Vice President of the United States, Mike Pence.
Well, hello, NRA. I love you too. And welcome back to the Hoosier State. I want to thank Wayne LaPierre for his leadership. The introduction he knows I prefer is pretty short. I'm a Christian, a conservative, and a Republican in that order, and it's my honor to welcome the NRA ILA back to Indiana. Thank you all for coming. It really is good to be back with all the patriots of the NRA, men and women who stand on the ramparts of freedom, defending all the God-given liberties enshrined in the Constitution of the United States every day. With your support, the Trump-Pence administration championed freedom for 4 remarkable years, and every single day we stood without apology for the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms. With your support, we achieved the lowest unemployment, the highest household income, the most pro-American trade deals, the most secure border, and we made the most powerful military in the history of the world, stronger than ever before. But maybe most important of all, we appointed conservatives to every court in the land, including to the highest court. We gave America a new beginning for the right to life. And this last June, that conservative majority on the Supreme Court recognized the constitutional right to self-defense exists not just inside the home, but outside the home as well. And I'm incredibly proud to say the majority in the Bruen decision included all three of the Supreme Court justices that our administration appointed to the highest court in the land. So thank you for your support for those consequential 4 years. And thank you for the honor of serving as your vice president. It was the greatest honor of my life. You know, my life has changed a lot since the last time I stood at this podium, standing before the NRA. 2 years ago, we moved back here to Indiana, bought 5 acres and a pond. I got a riding mower, John Deere 54-inch deck, 0-turn radius, 25 horsepower. You know, one of the great things about no longer being vice president is you get to drive your own car. One of the bad things is you get to pay for your own gas. And maybe most important of all, that Karen and I they're the proud parents of 3. We actually have become grandparents 3 times over in the last 2 years. Man. We finally figured out the reason we had kids was to have grandkids. Times have changed for us all, though, haven't they? In many ways, today our country is almost unrecognizable to what it was just a few short years ago. Today our borders are under siege. Inflation's at a 40-year high. Gas prices are through the roof. Crime is skyrocketing in our cities. Real wages are falling, and the national debt is piling into a mountain range on our children and those grandchildren. And the confidence and pride that once lifted the American spirit to new heights just a few years ago has been replaced with national fear and uncertainty. All across the country, a crime wave is wreaking havoc in our largest Democrat-run cities. Left-wing district attorneys are refusing to prosecute criminals, and left-wing politicians have slashed police funding and blanketed airways with incendiary rhetoric that fuels the chaos, endangers police officers, and threatens American lives. Well, I came here today before the NRA to say enough is enough. It's time we took a stand for America and for freedom. Because the truth is, as we stand here today, American freedom is under attack as never before. Big media, big government, even big business have locked arms to advance a pernicious, radical left agenda, trampling on free enterprise, the freedom of speech, the freedom of religion, and the right to keep and bear arms. You know, not in a million years could anyone have imagined that an American credit card company would someday collude with liberal politicians to track, monitor, shame, and eventually shut down legal gun store purchases. But that's exactly what's happening as we speak. But I'll promise you, with a new Republican Congress and a new Republican president, we will kick these liberal meddlers out of our gun stores and out of your lives. You know, the elites in Washington have never been more out of touch with the values of everyday Americans, and never more intent on imposing their agenda on each and every one of us. Anyone who dares to disagree with their left-wing dogma is targeted for harassment and ridicule. They want to take away your freedom of speech. They want to take away our religious liberty. And as you all well know, they want to take away the right to keep and bear arms. But let me make you a promise. As long as there is breath in my lungs, I will stand with you to ensure that the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. We gather today at this NRA-ILA Leadership Forum in a very challenging time in our nation. in the wake of tragic violence that struck here in the heartland in recent days, at a Christian school in Nashville, Tennessee, and at a bank branch in Louisville, Kentucky. The Bible says that we mourn with those who mourn and grieve with those who grieve. And I know I speak with everyone here when I say that our hearts and our prayers are with all the families that suffered loss and injury in these unspeakable attacks. Ignoring the motivations of the trans activists who killed 3 children and 3 adults at that Christian school in Nashville, and ignoring the mental health challenges of the man who killed 5 people and injured 8 others in Louisville, President Biden and the Democrats have returned to the same tired arguments about gun control and gun confiscation. But we don't need gun control. We need crime control. We don't need lectures about the liberties of law-abiding citizens. We need solutions to protect our kids. So I say to Joe Biden and the gun control extremists, give up your pipe dreams of gun confiscation in this free society. Stop endangering our lives with gun bans and stop trampling on the God-given rights of the American people every time tragedy happens. Instead, you could actually join us in doing things that would bring real solutions and enhance safety to America's families. You could take steps to end violent crime in our major cities. You could confront the scourge of mental health in this country. It's claiming lives every year. And while you're at it, why don't you secure the southern border of the United States of America and end the tidal wave of illegal immigrants and drugs pouring into our cities? You know, as a grandfather of those 3 little girls, I'm just going to tell you from my heart, I'm tired of it. Tired of the excuses, the predictable blame shifting, the pointless calls for gun control against law-abiding Americans. I'm tired of the senseless violence and the loss of life that could be prevented if our leaders would support law enforcement, protect our schools, institutionalize the obviously mentally ill, and enact legislation to ensure that anyone thinking about these heinous acts of mass shooting knows that they will face justice and face justice swiftly. Those are real solutions. And it begins with electing leaders who will stand without apology with the men and women of law enforcement and end the defund the police movement once and for all. You know, the police officers in Nashville and Louisville rushed in without regard to their personal safety and even engaged the assailants after they were injured. They deserve the thanks and gratitude and admiration of every American. So we need to support and back the blue. But secondly, with Joe Biden spending trillions of dollars on their liberal agenda, I think the time has come for leaders in our nation's capital to give every community in the country the funds to place armed resource officers in every public and private school in America. You know, in the wake of the Sandy Hook shooting, right after I was elected governor in 2012, we enacted legislation here in the Hoosier State to do just that. The most prosperous nation in the history of the world can afford to protect our kids. It'll just take leadership to do it. So stand with law enforcement, protect our kids. And finally, while the assailants in the most recent attacks were taken out by law enforcement on the scene, too many mass shooters languish in prison for years. Well, men and women, I don't have to tell you, justice delayed is justice denied. It's inconceivable to me that the shooter who killed 17 people at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in 2018 is languishing in a Florida prison. I believe the time has come to institute a federal death penalty statute with accelerated appeal to ensure that those who engage in mass shootings face execution in months, not years. And finally, with so much violence taking place at the hands of those with severe mental illness, the answer to mass shootings is not fewer guns, but it's more institutional mental health in this country. You know, in the 1960s, liberals emptied our psych wards only to fill our streets and ultimately our prisons with the mentally ill. Today, more than 20% of our prison population have serious mental illness. And the truth is, these people shouldn't be in prison because they never should have been allowed out on the streets to commit the crimes that they committed. You know, one of my last acts as governor of Indiana before I became your vice president was we broke ground here in the Hoosier State on the first new mental health hospital to be built in 30 years. Men and women, we have got to get back to institutional mental health care in this country. Families with someone who is struggling, a threat to themselves or a threat to others, have to have a place to send that family member other than the county lockup. We've got to rebuild institutional mental health care in America. Now, while the other side talks reflexively about gun control, these are real solutions. Backing the blue, protecting our kids, advancing policies that will ensure that justice is swift, and dealing with the dangerous mentally ill with institutional care. But it's going to take new leadership to get these things done. You know, when the government allows rampant crime, or even worse, when it encourages rampant crime by lax prosecutors in our major cities, government's enabling assault not just on the American people, but on liberty itself. I mean, I don't need to tell you, the Constitution of the United States is the greatest charter for freedom in the history of mankind. It's the foundation of who we are, the most prosperous free nation the world has ever known. And now more than ever, America needs the voices of the millions of patriots of the NRA to stand up and to stand on the Constitution of the United States. You know, more and more it seems like there are two kinds of people in this country. Those who believe the Constitution says what they want it to say, and those who believe the Constitution says what it means. We're looking out at all of you. I know you know the Constitution says what it means and means what it says, and so do I. And I will always stand on the Constitution of the United States and defend all the God-given liberties enshrined there. So help me God. People aren't always going to understand when you make that stand. I don't have to tell people that defend the Second Amendment. Criticism may come. And so I'm here in closing just to urge you to stand your ground. In these challenging times, we need freedom-loving Americans everywhere Stand your ground on the foundation of the Constitution of the United States. Stand your ground by continuing to educate this rising generation about the foundation of our freedom. Stand your ground by electing men and women at every level of government who believe in and will support and defend the principles enshrined in our nation's charter. And as you stand your ground in these troubled times for our nation, if you're inclined to bow the head and bend the knee, I encourage you to do that too. You know, this country's in a lot of trouble. We need healing in America. We need to bring our nation together around our highest ideals. So as you go forth from this city and return to your homes, I encourage you to remember those ancient words, that if his people who are called by his name will humble themselves and pray and turn, he'll do like he's always done in the long and storied history of this country. He'll hear from heaven, and he'll heal this land, this one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Thank you for the honor of serving. Thank you for being here in the Hoosier State, and thank you for your strong and unwavering stand for freedom. God bless you all.
What a day. It's a pleasure to introduce our next speaker. As the 46th governor of Arkansas, he has always signed and supported gun rights legislation. He's always had the courage to defend the right to keep and bear arms. Several years ago, this man stepped up to help NRA and develop real solutions to help keep American schools safe. Together, we assembled a task force of Homeland Security experts, law enforcement trainers, and school security professionals, and the result is the NRA's School Shield program that, given a chance to work, can keep our kids safe. Ladies and gentlemen, here's my friend and yours, Governor Asa Hutchinson.
Thank you, Wayne. Such a privilege to be here at the NRA today. Thank you for fighting for our freedoms through the years. I just finished 8 years as governor of Arkansas, and it was during that time that we created jobs, lowered taxes, we improved education, we shrunk the size of government. But one of the things that is just as important as anything else is to support the Second Amendment and our freedoms that we enjoy as Americans. I have stood with the NRA through my time in public service, and it has been my honor to do that for over 20 years. As a member of Congress, I was on the Judiciary Committee, and I did battle with the Second Amendment with liberals such as Barney Frank, and we fought the battle and we stood firm. When I was asked by President Bush to be a part of the Department of Homeland Security, the largest government reorganization in 50 years. I had responsibility for the border security. We didn't get it perfect, but let me tell you, it's a lot better than it was today and what Joe Biden has done. And whenever you look at the border security, whenever you look at the transportation networks, I was pleased to work with the NRA to make sure that our men and women who carried firearms can do it safely on an airplane. You can make sure you can go hunting. We made sure the rules accommodated our outdoorsmen. And then it was after the Newtown tragedy in which we lost young people in a school. I was asked by the NRA to lead the School Shield Initiative. And as Wayne mentioned, I put together an assembly of former Secret Service, law enforcement, educators. We looked at the schools. We looked at what we need to do to better protect our children. And we did a national study. We made recommendations. And you can still look at that, and those recommendations have made a difference in our society. And we've moved in that direction in which we understand fundamentally in a school, if you're going to protect children, you need to have armed personnel to protect the children. And so in Arkansas, we not only put school resource officers that were trained in law enforcement techniques, but we also authorized school personnel to be trained and to be commissioned as a commissioned officer to carry a firearm in the school and protect the children. We understood that the best protection is an armed personnel in order to protect children from an armed intruder. And the time of response is critical. And that is why we wanted to make sure that the school had the personnel there that was trained and ready to respond in the quickest fashion. And so we did that. An example in Arkansas, now we have over 80 schools in which we have over 500 commissioned personnel of the school that's been trained to carry a firearm and to use it and to execute it if necessary to protect the children. That is being duplicated across the country, and we need to make sure that we continue to support that effort. And so I've supported the Second Amendment in a lot of different capacities, and most recently as governor of Arkansas. And not only was it my joy to support the Second Amendment, but also those firearms manufacturing companies need a home. And I said, you can come to Arkansas and you can have a home where we welcome you. And I was delighted to recruit Sig Sauer to come to Arkansas and to build an ammunition plant. And now I am here before you as a candidate for President of the United States, and I guarantee you that I will continue to stand with the NRA. I will continue to stand for the Second Amendment and the fight that we have in front of us. But you know, we have some challenges that we face in America. There's the threat of violence in our cities, where urban mayors and chiefs of police are not doing their duty. My answer to the challenge of violence in our society are three simple words, and that is enforce the law. After the tragic murder of George Floyd, there were protests across America, many of those termed violent. Little Rock was no exception. And I witnessed the violence when I said our local law enforcement is not getting the job done. There was threats to people, there were burning buildings, and I said enough is enough. And I called the state police out, I called the National Guard out, and I said we're going to enforce the law. That night we arrested 70 violent criminals, and guess what happened? The violence stopped. You enforce the law. You enforce the law. I did that as United States Attorney, and we need to set that example across America. Today we have a struggling economy in which you're hit with high interest rates and high inflation. And it all is the root cause and comes from excessive federal spending in Washington, D.C. We need to slow it down. We need to get a rein on it. We need to balance our budget. We need to get back to spending normalcy
so you don't get hit with inflation and high interest rates. America needs to be strong. Right now, we are struggling in America because we are perceived as weak by our adversaries, which started in our disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan, in which our enemies said, this is a good time to go into Ukraine, by Russia. China has been more aggressive toward Taiwan. America needs to be strong. America needs to lead, and we should not retreat. It is important for America to lead and show strength and not weakness. And yes, we have a dysfunctional southern border, and we need to put more border resources there. We need to make sure that we support the Border Patrol that's doing the job, and we need to go after the cartels in Mexico that are controlling the border and sending fentanyl into the United States of America that is killing 100,000 of our young people every year. These are truly foreign terrorist organizations and should be designated as such. We need to have a pro-growth energy policy here in the United States. We shouldn't have our leaders going to Venezuela and Saudi Arabia and saying, can you please produce more oil? Let's produce energy in the United States of America so we can be independent and dominant. And then we need to stop the leftist social agenda that's coming out of Washington that's impacting our schools, our communities, and our businesses. We need to say enough is enough. And so these are challenges that we face. But I want to come back to something that Vice President Pence remarked about, and that is the tragedies that we have seen most recently in some of our schools and businesses. And our hearts go out to them. But I challenge the NRA, I challenge you to continue to support the National School Shield Initiative that enhances security in our schools and the safety of our children. Let's continue to address our nation's mental health issues and the critical nature that the deficient mental health services has left our country with. We need to enhance those services. We need to address the mental acuity challenges that are faced in our society. We have done that in Arkansas by enhancing the crisis stabilization units so that if someone has a mental health crisis and they come in contact with law enforcement, they can be given the help that they need versus filling up our jails. These are things that are practical and common sense. We need to enhance what we've done in Arkansas, the role of counselors in the schools to help those children that are struggling. And we need to be able to identify the problems and make sure that we issue our firearms under the Second Amendment to law-abiding citizens, but we need to enforce the law to keep them out of the hands of those that are prohibited by law from having those. That is simple common sense to keep us more safe. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm a son of the heartland. I am proud to be from Arkansas. I'm proud to grow up on a farm. I am proud to understand hard work and initiative and responsibility. And I'm proud to stand with you to protect our freedoms, to protect our Second Amendment. And when we look at the future, we need a president in the White House that understands the importance of the Second Amendment and the ability of citizens to protect themselves and to exercise their constitutional rights. We do not have that right now. And we have to win in 2024 to make sure that we can have those protections. And I challenge you today that we need to beat Joe Biden in 2024. And he's praying right now, yes, he's hoping right now that he gets to have a repeat of 2020. And let me tell you, we don't need a rerun of 2020. Let's bring new leadership. Let's win in 2024 to protect our liberties, to protect our border, to protect the sovereignty of the United States, and that America can once again lead. God bless America. Thank you. God bless you.
Please welcome past NRA President Chief Kane Robinson and Chairman of the NRA Law Enforcement Committee, Sheriff Jay Prince.
Boy, it's hard to see with all these lights up here, but before we get started, I want to tell you something about my partner up here, Jay Prince. He's a retired Montana sheriff. He's chairman of the NRA Law Enforcement Committee, and he's usually the biggest vote getter in NRA national elections. Congratulations, Jay. Now, I hope we'll all listen carefully to this one. I'm going to talk about somebody that's out in the audience, and we're going to announce an award, a pretty serious award. And so please listen carefully to this one. It's a tough story about what a cop goes through. It was August 22 last year in Oklahoma City. Deputies Mark Johns, Sergeant Swartz, and Deputy Norton of the Oklahoma County Sheriff's Office went to a residence to serve a court order. The target of the court order was loaded at the front door. He was located there by Deputy Norton, but soon went to the rear of the house where Sergeant Swartz and Deputy Johns were positioned. Communication failed when, we'll call him the target or the thug, when he began firing rifle bullets through the door, striking and eventually killing Sergeant Swartz. Deputy Johns pulled Sergeant Swartz out of the gunfire and then provided aid while trying to keep track of the thug's location. The guy moved through the house and attempted to engage Deputy Norton at the front. The shooter then ran out of the house and fired at Deputy Johns from a new location. They exchanged gunfire. Deputy Johns was hit and knocked down with a rifle round hit in the thigh, damaging his femoral artery and launching shrapnel into his guts. Deputy Johns continued to return gunfire as the gunman ran back in the house. The thug suddenly, believe this, the thug suddenly fled the residence, jumped into a vehicle which had a boat attached, and sped away while firing at the deputies and their vehicles. With Oklahoma County deputies and Oklahoma City officers in hot pursuit, he attempted to run through the security gate at Tinker Air Force Base, where he was captured. Despite being critically wounded in the incident, Deputy Mark Johns continued to return fire, protect Sergeant Swartz, Deputy Norton, and himself. His actions and courage under fire is a credit to his department, the community he serves, and keeps with the highest standards of law enforcement. And so now, it's with great honor and pride that the National Rifle Association names Deputy Mark Johns as the 22 NRA Law Enforcement Officer of the Year. He's right over there.
God bless that man and law enforcement in general. Thank you.
Please direct your attention to the screens for a video message from former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo.
Hello, I'm Mike Pompeo, fellow NRA member. Welcome to Indianapolis. Hope you have a great time at the show. What you're doing matters. Protecting the fundamental right to keep and bear arms. Don't ever step away from the fight. God bless you. Congratulations for being at another show. Stay at it. Good luck.
Ladies and gentlemen, please direct your attention to the screens for a special message from Florida Governor Ron DeSantis.
Hello, this is Governor Ron DeSantis, and I want to thank the National Rifle Association for all you do to preserve, protect, and defend the Second Amendment rights of the American people. The Second Amendment ensures that the American people have the capacity to defend their lives, fortunes, and sacred honor. It's the last backstop of freedom, the foundation upon which all of our other rights rest. Now, there are some today who see the Second Amendment as an outdated remnant of a bygone era, but the capacity of the people to defend themselves is the basis of their ability to rule themselves. It is no coincidence that throughout history, one of the first things that authoritarian regimes have sought to do is to disarm their own citizens. I find it curious that the same people who advocate the defunding of law enforcement tend to be the same people who express hostility for individual gun rights. They want criminals to have the upper hand over law-abiding citizens. As governor, I've resisted calls to take up gun control, even when such a stand is superficially unpopular, because I understand that it is precisely at those moments when a right is unpopular that it needs true champions. Like we do with other issues in Florida, we've gone on offense to expand individual gun rights. I called on the legislature to expand Floridians' ability to protect themselves, their families, and all they hold dear, and we delivered. Earlier this month, I signed into law constitutional carry legislation that will bring Florida into line with 25 other states that recognize the fundamental right of law-abiding American citizens to keep and bear arms without a government-issued permission slip. Because of our efforts in Florida, we now have a majority of states in this country that recognize such a right. Now, your efforts in Tallahassee and in state capitals across the country paved the way for us to get this legislation across the finish line. We're also concerned about how the politicization of our economy and the advancement of so-called ESG and woke capital has threatening implications for Second Amendment rights. Too many major financial institutions have discriminated against those involved in the firearm industry, including owners of gun stores. These wealthy interests are trying to impose an anti-Second Amendment agenda on society, an agenda that they could never successfully advance through the normal political process. In Florida, we are enacting protections for Floridians against woke financial institutions. Nobody should be discriminated against because they are gun owners or because they are involved in the gun industry. And finally, we cannot allow administrative agencies of the federal government to enact gun restrictions through administrative fiat. We oppose that in the state of Florida, and we will fight back against that. I want to thank you for standing for freedom. Thank you for standing for our Constitution. I'm glad to have had your support for our efforts in Florida. Keep it up, and God bless America.
Please direct your attention to the screens for a special message from former UN Ambassador and South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley.
Hi, it's Nikki Haley coming to you from Iowa. I am sorry I'm not there with you later this week when you are meeting. I will be at my daughter's wedding. So excuse me for not being there, as it's a happy time for our family. The NRA has been a great partner for a long time. When I was governor, we worked together as I expanded the Castle Doctrine. We backed constitutional carry. We did reciprocity with my sister state, Georgia, and so much more. I am a concealed weapons permit holder myself. My husband is a hunter, and we value the fact that citizens have the right to protect themselves. And so know that you've always got a friend in me, you've always got a partner in me as they try and take away any of our constitutional rights. But I want to thank you for meeting together, and I want to thank you for always fighting the good fight, and I look forward to seeing you soon. God bless.
the United States Senator from South Carolina, Tim Scott, has a video message for all NRA members.
Hello, Senator Tim Scott. Let me first say thank you so much for endorsing my 2022 campaign for the U.S. Senate. We were very successful. Your support was a part of that. Also, I'm excited to have an A rating by the NRA. I will always stand in the gap to make sure Americans are the best, safest people on earth. Unfortunately, the radical left, they want Americans, it seems, to be unsafe and unarmed, but not on my watch. It's one of the reasons why, even on the banking committee, we were trying to stop banks from unbanking gun manufacturers. This is a place where we have to take a stand. Our Constitution guarantees our Second Amendment rights. I will stand with each and every one of you in protection of what we all know is common sense. God bless you.
Since first taking office, our next speaker has been a dedicated defender of the right to keep and bear arms. As a candidate, she promised to eliminate burdens on the right to carry in South Dakota. And once elected, she wasted no time in making good on that promise. The very first piece of legislation she signed as governor was constitutional carry. Ladies and gentlemen, the 33rd governor of South Dakota. How about a big hand for Kristi Noem?
So wonderful to be with so many friends here today. Are you excited? God bless America. Charlton Heston once said, "Those dead old white guys who invented this country, they knew what they were talking about." So often all we need to do to inspire us for future fights is to look at the examples of the past. Our founding fathers and our former leaders, they charted a visionary path for our country. They created an exceptional experiment of freedom and a personal responsibility that would withstand centuries of storms and challenges. To keep what they built, we must be people who act on values and character rather than our personal benefit. So much of who we are is determined by how we were raised. Now listen, I didn't grow up in politics. On our farm and ranch, we didn't talk about politics, we lived them. We had a gun cabinet in our living room. We had a shotgun hanging in the back window of every single pickup and tractor. Our family vacations were even hunting trips. Long before I ever ran for office, I became a lifetime member of the NRA. My dad taught us life lessons. He taught us common sense, and often those were taught during our hunting trips. As soon as we were old enough to ride a horse, he would take us hunting. He'd pack us by horseback, sometimes 20 miles back into the wilderness to hunt elk. I didn't always know it back then, but those hunting trips gave me a lot of confidence. They helped me become a problem solver. For instance, I remember being only about 9 or 10 years old, and we had hunted all day, miles and miles from camp in the high country in the Bighorn Mountains, when my dad turned to me and he said, "Kristi, hunt your way back to camp. I'm gonna go around this ridge and I'll meet you there at dark." And he disappeared over the ridge. Now, to a 10-year-old girl, this was terrifying. And as strange noises came and darkness fell, I had to rely on my instincts and my horse to find my way back to our tent. Now, years later, Mom shared with me that my dad had followed me at a safe distance all the way back to camp to make sure that I got there safe. Now, before you get all warm and fuzzy on him, I also want to tell you that he made bear noises the whole time he was following me. Scratching trees and growling at me, so, you know, he made sure I lived, but he wanted me to be lived scared. But he made me stronger. And it also made me realize that I could conquer challenges that were put in front of me. It made me who I am today, and that's the first female governor of the state of South Dakota. Now with me today, I have my husband, Brian, who has been with me every step of the way for the last 31 years. Now I want to thank him for all of his support, but also for the amazing family that we've been blessed with. And speaking of family, I've got 3 kids, 2 son-in-laws, and did you know that I'm also a grandmother? Not just once, but twice. Have 2 beautiful grandchildren. For those of you with grandchildren, there is no question as to why we get up every day and we fight. We get up every day and we fight for our values. Little Miss Addie, who is almost 2, and Branch, who's just a few months old, they have brought us so much joy. They've brought us purpose. Now Addie, who, soon will need them, I want to reassure you, she already has a shotgun and she already has a rifle. And she's got a little pony named Sparkles too, so the girl is set up. There's a very famous quote that says, "Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it." Some would look at what's happening here in America today and they would call the times unprecedented. They would say unforeseen. I would say the exact opposite. It all sounds and it all looks and feels tragically familiar. We have been here before. A country that's arguing over policies, a public that's discouraged and dismayed by the lack of public discourse, violence in our streets and in our schools, families grieving their children, and loved ones that were destroyed by a deranged maniac for no apparent reason, and a White House that is so hell-bent on grabbing power and control of your life, they will do anything and stop at absolutely nothing to take it away. They will even take away your last tool of defense. The Second Amendment is about deterrence. It's about ensuring the government respects the rights and the liberty of citizens. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of a people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Those 27 words are freedom's last line of defense. The founders understood deeply that without an armed citizenry, authentic freedom could not and would not survive. And how did they know this? What were their circumstances? What did they know about human nature and the temptation to seize power? Did they know how fragile freedom could be? What exactly were they drawing on? First, they were drawing on their own experience. The founders knew that the country would never have survived the Revolutionary War if the colonists hadn't owned their own weapons. The very first battles of the Revolutionary War, the battles of Lexington and Concord, started when 800 expertly trained British soldiers came to seize the weapons of the citizens. Those colonists, those Americans, were untrained. They only had their personal weapons, their muskets and pistols to fight back. One American named Samuel Whitmore was 78 years old. Now think about that. In the 1770s, the average life expectancy was less than 40. As the British were retreating from the battle, Samuel hid behind a wall on his property. He ambushed the British all by himself. He shot one with his personal musket. He then shot 2 more with personal dueling pistols. All 3 of those British soldiers died from their wounds. For his heroism, Samuel was shot in the cheek, bayoneted 6 times, and clubbed repeatedly. The British left him there to die, but he refused to. He got medical treatment and he lived another 18 years. He lived to see American independence secured, to see the ratification of the Constitution, to see George Washington elected as the first president of the United States. And when the Revolutionary War was over, Samuel Whitmore would go down in history as the oldest, perhaps even the bravest colonial militiaman. That's how the American people won the Revolutionary War. The Continentals challenged the infantry of the British Empire with the same firearms that they used to hunt squirrels and deer and to feed their families. Men like Samuel Whitmore did not ask for permission from their government to own their own firearms. They didn't need it. God gave them that right. Samuel defended his own personal property with his own personal weapons. He defended his own freedom. Ladies and gentlemen, we don't have any idea what hard is. We don't have an oppressive foreign government that's marching across our land and threatening to take everything from us. But we all have our part we need to play to defend our liberty. God gave you those liberties. God gave you the right to defend yourself and your family. Our government recognizes that right, but we do not have to ask permission to defend it. Each of us needs to be as bold and as brave as Samuel Whitmore. It doesn't matter if you're 18 or if you're 78. Now, what else did the founding generation understand? They knew human nature. Writing in 1775, Thomas Paine laid it out clearly. With avarice and ambition have a place in the heart of man, the weak will become prey to the strong. The history of every age and nation establishes these truths, and facts need little argument when they prove themselves. Today, I admit the future looks uncertain. I would say clearly it can be found the answers studying the past and striving to do better. Let's be teachable. The National Rifle Association has leaders who stand in the vortex for us today, such as Wayne and Susan. We see them and their family walk through the fire for us, and we are grateful for that. But we should also look at headlines from 25 years ago and see what we can learn for today. I want to reference a Washington Post article that was dated June 9th of 1998. It summarizes where we stood then in this battle for freedom, but it also reflects much of today's reality. The Post reported the following. The National Rifle Association installed Charlton Heston as its new president today and loudly applauded his pledge to steer the organization back to the political mainstream from what Heston described as the fringe of American life. The choice of Heston was seen in large part as a response to public relations problems for the NRA. They had intensified recently because of several school shootings and rising calls for stricter gun laws opposed by the group. Now, having the right messenger matters. You ask why I'm here today? Why do I boldly support the NRA? Now, I probably don't look like a traditional NRA member. The media would have us believe that the NRA is only made up of old white guys. And all you old white guys can be proud and raise your hands. But there's a lot of other people, a lot of diversity within the NRA. Well, let me tell you something. I may be a mom and a grandma, but I am the NRA. Our daughters and our granddaughters, every American is the NRA. I didn't know I could even be a hunter until I saw my grandma was a hunter, and she was a pretty famous duck hunter. She was good. The Post in that article went on to say that Heston rose to power in the NRA because of the need to soften the organization's public image. Calling the school shootings a child issue, not a gun issue, Heston reasserted the NRA's long-standing position that violence grows from unraveling family values and weak prosecutors and judges. He also added a new twist. He called on the White House to acknowledge many gun violations go unprosecuted for lack of resources. He called on the Justice Department to start prosecuting every federal gun law violation in one major city. This, he said, would include attempts by felons to buy guns, which are rarely prosecuted except in combination with violent crimes. Heston pulled no punches in his first day as president. Referring to the Second Amendment, he said, those dead old white guys who invented this country, they knew what they were talking about. Now again, this article is from 25 years ago, yet that conversation is so relevant for today. What if prosecutors actually did their jobs instead of going on the political attack? What if the laws we had today were actually enforced? What if, when tragedy happens, families gathered together, they bowed their heads, and they prayed for wisdom and discernment on how to heal hearts and minds, rather than to debate the methods used by those in society who do harm? Our problems are not new, yet the threat is greater. Every time our country stands in the path of danger, it is always the patriots to first hear the call. Even the most common man deserves uncommon freedom, and we, the patriots, must be resolved to take action. Why do the liberals and Joe Biden want our guns? Because it will make it easier for them to infringe on all of our other rights. As the late, great Justice Scalia wrote in the Heller decision, history showed that the way tyrants had eliminated a militia consisting of all the able-bodied men was not by banning the militia, but simply by taking away the people's arms, enabling a select militia or standing army to suppress political opponents. Well, Biden hasn't done that yet, but why is that? Why haven't they achieved their goal? It's because of you. Because each of you and every one of you is the NRA. Because we have successfully held off federal legislation that would infringe on our fundamental constitutional right to keep and bear arms. We have kept our rights from being infringed. And in the last few years, we've seen government overstep its authority more than ever before. I've said that China didn't just export COVID to the world, they exported communist lockdowns as seemingly the only way of stopping it. In fact, until South Dakota refused, and was the only state that refused to issue any lockdowns, I don't know if political leaders even realized that there was another option. I was shocked at how quickly people gave up their freedoms. Politicians closed churches, so people willingly gave up their freedom of religion. Politicians said you couldn't gather in groups, so people willingly gave up their freedom of assembly. Politicians worked with social media companies to stifle dissent, so people willingly gave up their freedom of speech. I think the American people could learn a thing or two from the NRA. This is not a group of people who give up their God-given constitutional rights willingly. During the pandemic, I spent a lot of time outdoors. Sometimes you just needed a break from the fear and the paranoia that was going on TV and in all the newspapers. My family would often go and relax at a cabin, go fishing, go pheasant hunting. One day I made a video of me shooting a pheasant. I don't know if you've seen it. I had turned to the camera after shooting a bird and said, "Less COVID, more hunting." And the liberals melted down on me. I was a little embarrassed by that video, though, because it took me 3 shots to drop that bird. Obviously, I was a little out of practice. I was making fun of myself. I needed more hunting. It wasn't my best day shooting, and I shouldn't have been surprised when PETA and all the liberal media came unglued and came after me. They couldn't believe that I would say less COVID, more hunting. I was kind of confused by it. Did they want more COVID or less hunting? But since then, we've had less COVID, so thank God. And we've had plenty of more hunting. In fact, South Dakota has the best pheasant hunting in the world. And if you haven't come to enjoy it with us, then you should. But South Dakota's greatest asset is our people. Our state motto is, "Under God, the people rule." And while enduring many challenges over the last several years, we have worked together to turn those challenges into opportunities. Our state is thriving as a result of embracing liberty and personal responsibility. We're setting the standard as the most Second Amendment-friendly state in the nation. The very first bill that I signed as governor guarantees constitutional carry for all law-abiding South Dakotans. I signed legislation to block state and local governments from being able to use an emergency declaration as an excuse to infringe on Second Amendment rights. We strengthened our Stand Your Ground law. We updated the definition of a loaded firearm to mean that if a round is chambered, making it easier to respond in situations when seconds count. And we made South Dakota the first state in America to not charge a fee for any concealed carry permit. In fact, we now even pay for your federal background check. It will not cost you a penny to exercise your Second Amendment rights in South Dakota. While leadership in Washington, D.C. fails to deliver meaningful solutions for the nation, our state will take action. South Dakota enjoys the strongest economy in the country, the lowest unemployment, and unprecedented economic growth. Make no mistake, freedom generated those blessings. Winston Churchill once said, "Never give in, never, 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 except to convictions of honor and good sense." Well, here, my honor and good sense require me to continue to fight for freedom, and that's what I'll do. As I look around this room, I see resolute faces prepared to stand up for honor and for good sense. You are prepared to defend our right to keep and bear arms. I also see a media at the back of the room who insists that we're crazy for doing so. They're prepared at times to shame us and to demonize us. I know they'll attack me for giving this speech and what I've said. But if they think that that's going to stop me, then they weren't paying very much attention during the pandemic. It's not just the media and the big government. It's not just the media and big government that are attacking our rights. Now we've seen banking institutions go after industries that they disagree with. Have you seen that? That they're threatening to withhold funding, cancel loans, and holding them to a different standard than how the left is treated. None have been more impacted than those who support the Second Amendment. Well, not on my watch. I won't stand for it, not in South Dakota. So I'd like to ask Wayne if he would come back out here and join me on stage, because today I'm going to be signing an executive order to protect your God-given right to keep and bear arms from being infringed upon financial institutions. So we'll welcome Wayne to the stage. Today I will sign an executive order to protect the God-given right to keep and bear arms from being infringed upon by financial institutions. My executive order, effective immediately, blocks state agencies from contracting with large banks that discriminate against firearm-related industries. Wayne, in 1787, Thomas Jefferson wrote a letter to James Madison, and he talked about how committed he was to freedom. He made this point in Latin, but it translates as, "I prefer dangerous freedom over peaceful slavery." Today with this, I'm not sure, do you have a microphone, Wayne? You don't. I get to put words into your mouth then.
There you go. You're doing great.
Wayne is extremely grateful to me for doing this for the NRA today.
On behalf of everyone in this room, gun owners throughout the country, and all our members and firearms owners in the great state of South Dakota, Governor, God bless you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. You stay right here. This is Executive Order number 2023-04. The State of South Dakota Office of the Governor, I will be signing it on behalf of protecting those industries related to the gun and firearm industry from being discriminated against by financial institution, banking, credit card, or otherwise. you. Thank you. I'll wrap up and then we'll go. Okay. As you leave here today, I want you to remember that quote that Thomas Jefferson wrote to James Madison. I prefer dangerous freedom over peaceful slavery. May we all leave here today inspired by our history and the blessings that we all enjoy, as well as the burden of responsibility that rests on your shoulders. Never give in. Never, never, never. Our freedom is in your hands. Thank you.
Uncle Sam put your name at the top of his list, and the Statue of Liberty started shaking her fist, and the eagle will fly, and it's gonna be hell when you hear Mother Freedom start ringing her bell, and it'll feel like the whole wide world is raining down on you. All brought to you courtesy of the red, white, and blue.
All right, how about that? Our next speaker has worked long and hard with their legislature to pass constitutional carry, the same freedom as their neighbors in Vermont. But it wasn't until this man took office in 2017 that constitutional carry became a reality in New Hampshire. Since then, he's vetoed all anti-gun legislation that reached his desk. Ladies and gentlemen, straight from the live free or die state, the 82nd governor of New Hampshire, Chris Sununu.
All right. Hey, Governor. Thank you, brother. That's all it's got. Hold on. All right. You guys excited? Come on, we're at NRA in Indianapolis, back for the first time in a few years. This is absolutely awesome. And we got a full crowd. We got a full room. I was out there walking the floor today, seeing all the incredible manufacturers, thousands of people walking around, getting excited about not just the Second Amendment and the politics and all that. We'll get to all that. But just the freedom, the individual opportunity to be part of something a little bit bigger than ourselves. That's exactly what America is all about. So, as a lot of you know, or not know, I am from the live free or die state, as we are very proud in New Hampshire to remind ourselves and the rest of the country. And I always tell folks, it is not some cute motto on our license plate. It is truly the essence of what we do, how we live, how we manage our communities within New Hampshire. And the heart of that is, so I'm like, are these teleprompters, by the way? Who's using teleprompters? Come on. Really. Look, the heart of that, the heart of live free or die, it's limited government, low taxes, local control, individual responsibility. All of these fundamentals that as a Republican governor, I try to remind my other fellow Republicans around the country, the founding fathers had it right. As we say in New Hampshire, they were wicked smart, right? But they were. It's about the individual. It's about the states. The last thing this country should be about is the federal government. I am from the government. I'm the governor, and I'm telling you, it ain't about us, right? I am not here to solve your problems. Government is not here to solve your problems. What are we here to do? Create opportunity. Create doors of opportunity for you, your family, your business, your school, whatever it might be. And then you do you. That's what live free or die is. You walk through the door of opportunity that best fits your needs, not the door of opportunity that the government forces you through. That's the old way of doing things. And look, the most important part of someone in a position of power, a governor, a president, whatever it might be, the most important part is knowing the limits of that power, the limits. That can be very easy to say, well, I'm right, so I'll just force that community to do that. I'm right, so we'll force that state to do that. Man, I don't care whether you're Republican or Democrat. You start down that path, that is a precedent that is un-American, that we are not getting ourselves out of. I'm looking out here at thousands of people in front of me. It's about you. It ain't about us. We have to appreciate this job, if you will, this responsibility, this opportunity.
when we represent the citizens that we represent, the opportunity is so much bigger than ourselves. And you have to walk into these situations, whether you're talking about the 2024 election, where you're talking about your neighbor that's running for the planning board or the school board. We all have to have a little bit of that live free or die in us to remember what is at the essence that makes this country great. And I don't mind saying it. I've seen a lot of Republicans that I respect very much. But man, do they cave under the political pressure when it comes to the Second Amendment. What is that about? The politics get involved. They get all this pressure on them. At the end of the day, you got to pull yourself out of the politics. You got to ignore it. You got to say what is best for my citizens, for this country, and what is best is their opportunity. And look, let's face it, I remember a very prominent Republican a couple years ago. I think he said, I think we need to take the guns away first. Take them away early, he said. What is that about? And I'm always going to hold folks accountable, not just the Democrats, not just the left wing, but even those in our own party. Because at the end of the day, when we share those ideals of true freedom, of true individual responsibility, the team gets bigger. And that's what I want. I want a bigger team. You want more members of the NRA? You want more members of the Republican Party? You want more independents getting on board? You want that next generation saying, you know what, those are the guys I want to be associated with. Those are the guys that are inspiring us to be bigger than ourselves, not just yelling at us all the time. What's with all the yelling, by the way? That's another one. I always laugh at that. I see all my fellow politicians, they're yelling at somebody. I said, look, man, no one gets inspired by getting yelled at. I try to remind them, look like you're enjoying your job. I'm the governor, and I've got to tell you, it's a great job. It's hard. 24/7, lots of responsibility. Any tragedy that hits in my state, I got to be there, on the ball, ready to go, with a system designed in place to create that opportunity for the community, right? But man, when we're always yelling at each other, we're not going to get it done. Just to talk about the politics, I get nervous about 2024. If we don't have those independents, if we don't have those folks back on the team, those disenfranchised voters, it ain't going to happen for us. We can yell and scream all we want, but we want winners. We want winners for tomorrow. And so we got to be inspirational. We got to be bigger than ourselves. Now, obviously, when you talk about leadership, when you talk about what could happen, we're talking about the issue of the day, if you will. You see these tragedies, these mass shootings in school. It's real. It's at an unprecedented level. And every time there's a mass shooting, every time there's a tragedy, what does the left do? They blame you. They blame you. They blame politics. They make a political story out of it. As opposed to saying, what is the crux of the issue? We know the crux of these issues. It's undiagnosed mental health. It's a lack of opportunity in schools. It's not supporting law enforcement. It's not supporting SROs. It's not hardening of the schools. All these things we do in New Hampshire. We don't just sit back. Well, we passed a law. Well, they gave me a red flag law. Yeah, they gave me red flag laws, and I gave them a red veto pen, right? Because that's what you have to do. I saw someone getting excited because they were going to sign constitutional carry in 4 years. I signed it in 4 weeks because that's what's right. So we saw Biden last year. I'm sure he doesn't remember, but we all do. He starts threatening the executive orders. You remember this one? Oh, he was just going to do executive orders to confiscate firearms and limit firearms and all of that sort of thing. So we quickly passed a law in New Hampshire that said, you're the federal government, we're the states, we go first, federal government, shove it. We're not doing it. We're not doing it. Look, my closing message is think big. Think big, think excited, think positive. How do you grow? How do you inspire? Again, I get back to how do we grow the NRA? How do we grow Republicans? How do we get excited about the opportunity that we're going to create for tomorrow? Not the law, not the imposing regulation, not the penalty on businesses and all that kind of crap. How do we get excited about those opportunities? I'm from New Hampshire, again, where we're very pro-business. We got some great manufacturers. We got SIG. I love my guys at SIG. I'm sure they're here somewhere. There's a lot of people, a lot of folks carrying the 320 out there. That's great. We got Ruger, by the way, the Red Hawk, if you can handle the Red Hawk, the Super Red Hawk, the 9-inch barrel, it's pretty impressive, by the way. We got a lot of our manufacturers. We're creating opportunities for them. But I want this team bigger. I want to make sure we're not barely and fighting for the finish line in 2024 when it comes to a presidential race or the Senate races or frankly, what I think are the most important things, the governor's races, or down to the school board where actually the most impactful decisions are sometimes made for your family and your community. I want to make sure that we are crushing this thing as a team, where it's not even a question, where the days of advertising to someone, hey, vote for me because I supported this policy, that is so old school, man. We have to influence. We have to use all the tools and all the resources at our needs. Because let me tell you, as bad as the Democrats are, they're good at the influencing. They're good at the messaging. Look at what they've done with young people. Look at what they've done with academia. That's real. That's happening. Now, we can sit here and complain about it. You can complain about the ultra-left-wing media, or we can actually do something about it and actually talk to our families, talk to our coworkers, inspire folks in our community to get them back on this team. And let's remember what's at the heart of every American, right? It's about tomorrow. The opportunity of tomorrow. It is not in our DNA as Americans to settle. It's not in our DNA as Americans to say, yeah, the leadership of yesterday is going to be our best chance for the leadership of tomorrow. Are you kidding? This is America. We want the next big idea, the next 2.0, the next generation, whatever it is. That is at the heart of why we are the envy of the world. Everybody wants to come to the United States. It ain't by accident. It's because we create opportunity. Keeps going back to that. So let's remember when we're talking to folks and we're making this team bigger, what is at our heart as Americans? What have we done really, really well, as we say in New Hampshire, wicked awesome? What have we done really, really well for the last 200 plus years? We believe in you, the individual. We believe in the community. We believe in the schools. We believe in the parents. We believe in those fundamentals that make us great. And we inspire folks to the point where the entire world wants to be here. And what is at the heart of all that? A little bit of that live free or die. That's what it is. If you want to take the model for your own states, that's fine too. And if you want to remind yourselves that New Hampshire is a place with no sales tax and no income tax or interest and dividends tax or millionaires tax, whatever, you can all rethink your life choices on the way home this weekend. That's fine. We're open for business. We're the only state growing like crazy in the Northeast. But remember what's at the heart of it all. It's you guys. It's the individual. Share that spirit. Spread it around, and there's nothing that can't stop us. At the end of the day, we just have to ask ourselves, are we going to sit back and whine about losing in 24? Or are we going to get it done? Let's get it done. Thank you, guys.
After listening to Governor Sununu, now you know why it's the live free or die state. If you've ever bought anything from Midway USA, you probably noticed their roundup option at checkout. You can round up your purchase to the next dollar. Let me tell you, those nickels and dimes really add up and go straight into the NRA, ILA war chest to fight for your rights. Here's what I mean. In the 30 years that Midway USA's Roundup program has donated more than $22 million to help ILA protect and defend the Second Amendment in the states, capitals, and courts across the country. The Roundup program was born in 1992. It was the brainchild of Larry and Brenda Potterfield, founders of Midway USA. All of us are grateful to the employees of Midway USA and all the customers who contributed to this extremely successful program. On behalf of NRA and ILA, how about help me showing our gratitude to Midway USA and especially Larry and Brenda Potterfield. Come on out.
I'm not running for office. But I do believe that the Second Amendment guarantees the rest. I'm going to tell you a short story, but let me make sure that you understand who's on the stage with me. Miss Brenda, 53 years we've been married. Our daughter Sarah with her pet. Grandson Jay, granddaughter Eliza. So you have 3 generations of the Potterfields. Now the short story. NRA Roundup. On the second day of January 1992, 30 years ago or so, we started asking customers, this is before the internet, we started asking customers if they would round up their order to the next higher dollar and allow us to donate their change to the National Endowment for the Protection of the Second Amendment. Now, who can imagine you need a national endowment to protect the Second Amendment to the Constitution? That was the NRA's idea. All that money since then has gone to that endowment, and it is all endowed. All the money that you have contributed, and I'll ask if there's any Midway USA customers here since the second day of January 1992. Well, in that $22 million, there's a lot of your money here, 50 cents at a time. So the second day of January 92, now we're at Salt Lake City NRA show in April or May of 1992, and I'm talking to Wayne Sheets, one of the NRA staffers, and we were talking about Roundup because every week we've been sending money, maybe $75 or $100. Midway was a much smaller company at that time. And we were talking about that, and he was thinking that was such a great deal, and in retrospect it was, but I said, you know, we can do more. When we get back home, Brenda and I are going to have a party. We're going to have a party for the NRA. And we did. We called our friends, a group of people, and we said, let's plan a party for the NRA this fall, the fall of 1992. So we got our friends together and we started having meetings, and we coined the term it's not that I can't remember it, it's just that I'm listening to everything that I say. We coined the term Friends of the NRA. So NRA Roundup spawned Friends of NRA, and you all know what Friends of NRA is. So, thank you very much for your time. There's now $22 million endowed. 5% of that goes every year back to ILA to pay, to respond to all the litigation out in all the states and all the counties and all the cities of America. With your help, and it's all your money, we can do more. Thank you. Thank you very much. And now let's take a look at the check.
They are just unbelievable. Let me tell you what the other thing he didn't tell you. They donated to the NRA Foundation just recently a building to house all of the warehouse, all the things needed for those. Well, it's almost 1,000 Friends of the NRA dinners. I think it's about 800 right now, but it's building back up. I think the building's about 168,000 square feet, and they donated it to Friends of the NRA Foundation. Now I'd like to introduce another great Hoosier. He's a freedom fighter, In the U.S. Senate, he's always stood strong for law enforcement, the Bill of Rights, and law-abiding gun owners. He's an avid sportsman who practices and preaches back here exactly what he means in Indiana. Ladies and gentlemen, U.S. Senator Mike Braun. How about a big hand for him?
Good afternoon. How many Hoosiers do we have out in the crowd? Smartest thing I ever did is when I lived away for a couple years, was decided to move back to my hometown in Jasper, Indiana. A little business, some Jasperites here too, built it into a national company. When you do stuff like that, you know what living the American dream is about. I'm now a U.S. Senator, one of the feistiest, most conservative ones that will speak up, fight every day when I'm in D.C., and I'll continue to do that. Growing up in Jasper, I learned the values that guide me today. Very clear: faith, family, community. Love the outdoors as well. 10 years old, Dad gave me a single-shot 20-gauge Stevens that I still use to harvest squirrels to this day. Have taught that to my kids and grandkids as well. Learn the importance of safety, pass those lessons on to my kids as well. We all learn the same safety rules. At the core of our belief is that human life is the most precious thing on earth and must be protected. Self-defense is an American right. It's as central to our nation's history as any other freedom we have. Indiana knows this. I'm proud to represent a state that respects the millions of law-abiding gun owners exercising their Second Amendment right to defend themselves and their families. Wasn't too long ago, a town not too far from here, Greenwood, was rocked by a senseless attack. A coward opened fire in a shopping mall food court, killing 3 people. Thankfully, a brave young Hoosier jumped into action. He was concealed carrying and had trained for this moment. 15 seconds after the first shot was fired, that good Samaritan fired the last one, thank goodness. And you know what he put online right before that? That gun-free zones are an easy target. Sad. He found out that there are good people everywhere who are ready to defend their lives and the lives of their fellow citizens. We honored the memory of the Greenwood victims in the Senate last year and made a special commendation for that young man for his swift, solid action. Let's give that guy a round of applause. As the Greenwood police chief said, he saved many, many lives that day. The Good Samaritan is a hero and also a reminder that our Second Amendment right to self-defense also comes with responsibilities to be well-trained, moral, and always ready. I visit all 92 counties each year. I'm the only senator that said you can visit me on a Friday in my hometown. We've got to be accessible. If we're going to be conservatives, they're going to fight for what is a center-right country. We've got to do a better job than we're doing in D.C. I've met all kinds of Hoosiers who are worried about their Second Amendment rights being taken away. These days, the conversation coming out of D.C. is not about how to keep guns out of the hands of criminals and the mentally ill. It's about trying to end private gun ownership as we know it. That's not going to happen on my watch. The The Biden administration doesn't have the support for their initiatives in Congress, but that doesn't stop them. It's just not guns that they're overreaching on. Before I was elected to the Senate, I felt the pain of government overreach in the lives every day of my employees and in running my business. I told Hoosiers if they send me to D.C., I would fight to drain the swamp, change the status quo. When Biden announced his unconstitutional, immoral vaccine mandate for businesses down to 100 employees, you know who had to step up? A freshman senator. Proudly did it, exercised the Congressional Review Act, and thank goodness our Supreme Court weighed in 2 weeks later and said enough is enough. We took a stand, our office did, against overreach, and we won. It took until this week for President Biden to finally end this ridiculous COVID emergency declaration. Look how long it took. That's been in the rearview mirror for a long time. Look at the damage it's done to our country. The president's ability to declare a national emergency and seize extra powers presents a threat to bearing our arms as well. That's why I wrote a bill that would prevent the president from declaring a national emergency to impose gun control. That will be the next thing that'll happen. Hopefully this passes through Congress. He probably won't sign it, but it'll make a statement. Speaking of COVID, our own government has been hiding what we have in our own intel agencies. Senator Josh Hawley, he and I came in together back in 2018. We did the bill that every senator signed, Democrat and Republican, passed in the House, and finally Biden is going to have to reveal what they've been hiding in terms of that intel for all this time. That came from your freshman senator from Indiana. Thank you. So we will soon have more information. They got 90 days to release it. I don't think Dr. Fauci is going to be in a very good mood after that. I'm on that committee that interviews him, and there's only one problem. Rand Paul goes 2 senators before me, and I can tell you he's not in a good mood after Rand's done with him. They are political enterprisers, and the best way to understand the difference between their side of the aisle and mine, especially if you're a Main Street conservative, they look at the federal government as their growth business and their cathedral all wrapped into one, and they operate accordingly. Until we, as Main Street conservatives, do a better job out there, we're not going to see something different in D.C. I'm going to fight hard to try to change that. Here's another recent thing that occurred. Your hard-earned money. They have a ruling that came out of their Labor Department that says you can now invest not on the rate of return, but on any woke agenda. We got that passed through the House and the Senate and was proud that it initiated Biden's first veto. Came from your freshman senator from Indiana. When I ran, I pledged I wouldn't do it more than 2 terms. The founders never intended the place to be run by career politicians, the bureaucracy and swamp that goes along with it. Even brought back earmarks, which is sad because it's an example of how so many people out there shrug their shoulders. 18 trillion in debt when I got there, now 31 trillion. Our fearless leader puts us 51 trillion in debt in 10 years. Something's wrong. I'll be a loud voice against that. Shameful that you'd borrow money from your kids and grandkids. Someday, maybe we'll get a constitutional amendment that gives us term limits and a balanced budget. And I think it's here closer than what you might think. All of us here know the federal government is reaching into every part of our lives, trampling the Constitution. Some on the other side of the aisle want government to completely replace the productive economy and our nuclear family. They want to replace us with them. That's not going to happen, but we as conservatives in D.C. have to articulate it better, and until we do, I'm afraid we're going to be disappointed. We need more fighters. We're going to hear from a couple here in just a moment. My friend Jim Jordan from Ohio is coming out. And then the ultimate outsider is going to close the day out, President Trump. He came in 4 times for me when I took out 2 congressmen and a sitting senator. We needed to be populated in our federal government with outsiders, or you can expect more of the same. He's the ultimate outsider. Look how well things were running pre-COVID. It's not complicated. Let's get back there. So the right to defend yourself and your family, it's in our Constitution. It's a moral right and a solemn duty. Indiana will always respect the rights of law-abiding Americans. Hoosiers understand that the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness depends on the right to defend ourselves and our families. I will always stand up for Americans against the overreach of the federal government into every aspect of our lives at the cost of our constitutional freedoms. Count on it, period. Thank you.
All you need to know about our next speaker is he's a 2-time NCAA wrestling champion, and he's still taking him to the mat in Washington. He chairs the House Judiciary Committee, and lately you've seen him on TV battling the weaponization of the DOJ, the FBI, the ATF, and even President Biden himself. Ladies and gentlemen, from Ohio's 4th District, Congressman Jim Jordan.
Good to be with you. Thank you. Sit down, sit down. Sit down. I haven't said anything yet. How many watched the State of the Union address a couple months back? Any of you watch the State? I always tell folks this is as close to pageantry as we get in America, so I go to it. I don't really remember a whole lot of what President Biden said because he didn't say anything really that noteworthy in my judgment. But I thought the response afterwards by Governor Huckabee Sanders, did you watch the response? Any of you watch that? Yeah, I thought she did a great job. And she said the divide in America today, I thought the best line, the divide in America today is normal versus crazy. Remember when she said that? And it is so true. Think about the left today. It is crazy to say boys should compete against girls in sports. It's just crazy. But that's where the left's at. It is crazy to think we should defund the police. And think about it. We got great law enforcement around here. God bless these guys for what they do. Thank you. it is crazy to say non-citizens should be voting in our elections. But that's what the left wants to do. How about this one? It is crazy to let a spy balloon, and the key word in there is spy. It is crazy to let a spy balloon fly clear across the continental United States. Now, again, not just a spy balloon, not just a spy balloon, not from Canada, not from Panama, but a spy balloon from China. It is crazy to let that fly clear across the country and then shoot it down. But that's today's left. It is crazy to use federal tax dollars to indict a former president for no crime, and then when we try to investigate, to take us to court. But that is exactly what happened this last week. And it is crazy for these federal agencies to be turned against the American people, to be weaponized against we the people like we see, and in particular the ATF. It is crazy to make you a criminal if you have a stabilizing brace for your pistol. But they did that. And it is crazy to shut down gun dealers for minor paperwork violations, but they're doing that as well. Think about it. I mean, sometimes we got to let this sink in about how serious a time we live in. Think about this. First, they want to make you a criminal for having a firearm accessory that they said was okay for a decade. Then they want to shut down the places where you can purchase a firearm. That from the ATF. In fact, in 2 weeks, we plan on passing legislation that will overturn that ATF rule when it comes to the pistol brace, passing it out of the Judiciary Committee. All those crazy things, that's why what you're doing, standing up for Second Amendment liberties, for freedom, is so darn important. And understand what we're up against. I always say, the left has a template. The left has a way they go about business. It's the same playbook all the time. The left will tell a lie. Big media will report the lie. Big tech will amplify the lie. And then when you try to tell the truth, they try to censor you. They call you a racist. They call you a fascist. They come after you. The cancel culture mob, the left, the whole thing comes after you. If you're a mom and dad going to a school board meeting, you're called an extremist. If you're pro-life, you're called a radical traditional Catholic. And the FBI tries to infiltrate the church that you go to. We found that out this past week. Information we got from the FBI. And if you believe in the Second Amendment, they'll call you some MAGA hillbilly from flyover country, right? That's what they do. I mean, I'm in that category. I'm from right next door in God's country, Ohio. That's what we're up against. Yeah, we got some Ohioans here. So I just came to say thank you. Thank you for being in the fight. Thank you for being part of this great organization, this organization that is committed to protecting freedom. I learned a long time ago, good things don't just happen. You want to accomplish things of meaning and significance, you got to get off the sideline and get in the game. And you were doing that. So thank you for doing that. It's not easy. You're going to get attacked. You know that. It happens all the time. The press is going to attack us. In the press, they always get it right. I tell my colleagues in Congress, if the press isn't saying something bad about you, you're probably not doing anything any good, right? That's just how it works. I love what Cal Thomas, syndicated columnist Cal Thomas, had a great line when he was talking about the way normal people, like folks here today, view things, and the way the elite national media, like the New York Times, looks at things. And he had a great line. He says, I get up every morning, I read my Bible in the New York Times so I can see what each side's up to. A lot of truth to that. So thank you for being in the fight. Thank you for helping the good people who do run for office, who go and fight for the things that make our country special. And in particular, well, you're kind. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you. Sit down, sit down. You're very kind. I really want to thank you for helping President Trump over these last years. What they've done to this man, what they've done to a president who did more of what he said he would do when he was our leader, when he was our commander-in-chief, than any president I have ever seen. Thank you for standing by him. You think about They spied on his campaign. They raided his home. Now they indict him. They've been after him. But in spite of everyone being after him, he said he would reduce regulations. He did. He said he would cut taxes. He did. He said he would build the wall. He did. He said he would put the embassy in Jerusalem. He did. He said he would get us out of that crazy Iran deal, and he did. He said he would put conservatives on our highest court, and he did. And a whole bunch of other things he got done. And he did it with everyone. He did it. President Trump did it with everyone in that town against him. Every Democrat was against him. Everyone in the mainstream press was against him. Half the Republicans were against him. And maybe most importantly, all the bureaucracy was against him. But in spite of that, he did what he told us, we the people, that he would do. And I so appreciate that attitude. So thank you so much by standing by him. What he's been through, I don't know of anyone who could. He stood up to it, and he always says this, and it's so true. He fights for us. They come after him because he's fighting for us. That is so true. That is so true. Let me just finish by saying this. It is a tough time for our country, and I do believe our freedoms and our rights are under assault by the very government that's supposed to serve us. But never forget, it's the greatest country ever, and we have risen to the occasion every single time there's been a challenge, every single time there's been some obstacle, some difficulty. We as Americans rise to the challenge. We'll do it again. We got to have the right attitude. I call it the attitude that Paul talked about in Scripture. My favorite Scripture verse, 2 Timothy 4:7. Paul's the old guy, gives advice to the young guy. What's he say? Fight the good fight, finish the course, keep the faith. I tell people I love that verse because it's not wimpy, sissy words. It's fight, finish, keep. Words of actions, words that fit Americans. That is our charge. It always has been. Let me just finish. I tell this story a lot, but I think it captures how great this country, the greatest nation ever, United States of America, how great this country is. My wife Polly and I, this is several years ago now, we live just over in Ohio and just north of Dayton, and we have some good friends in the Dayton area who invited us to come down for dinner. It's this time of year, summertime of year. And they said, we were free that evening. We said, yeah, we'll come down. And they said, well, before we go to dinner, we want to tour the Wright brothers' home there in Dayton. And we said, great. We like history and the house we live in, raised our family in, is an old home. And we said, great, we love that. We love to do that. So we go, we meet our friends there, and you pay the lady at the door like $5 with the Historical Society, and they take you on a tour of the Wright brothers' home. And you learn all kinds of neat things about these two amazing Americans. You learn about the bicycle shop. You learn about other things they were tinkering and messing with. It was all interesting stuff. And you learn all about the family and the house and everything else. The last stop on the tour, it's Orville's bedroom. You're there, and they tell you a few more things about this particular Wright brother. And then they finish the tour by showing you two pictures. First picture they hold up was that very first flight, 1903, Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, in this thing they called a plane. And you looked at that picture and you're like, how did that thing get off the ground? I mean, this contraption, how did it? The truth is it barely did. Flew like 100 feet, got like 10 feet off the ground. And you look at that and you kind of remember that from school when you learned that in 8th, 9th grade, whenever they teach you that, and you're like, okay, that's kind of interesting. They put that picture down, and then they hold up a second picture. 44 years later, 1947, Chuck Yeager breaking the sound barrier in a jet. And I was like, wow, I didn't remember that. Maybe I wasn't paying attention that day in school. I didn't know that. That's amazing. In 44 years, we went from two guys flying 100 feet in a thing they called a plane to another American breaking the sound barrier in a jet. And they put that picture down. Literally, that's the end of the tour. And Polly and I start walking out that door, and as we're walking out, it hit me. Wait a minute. Why did they stop there? I represent Wapakoneta, Ohio, hometown of Neil Armstrong, who 22 years later stepped on the moon. Stop and think about it. In 66 years, we went from two Americans flying 100 feet to putting a man on the moon. This country did that in one lifetime. I would argue there is no other nation capable of doing something like that, only this country. So don't ever let anyone tell you this is not the greatest nation ever and it's worth fighting for. God bless you all. Have a great day.
I'll tell you, what a day. Our next speaker is a businessman, investor, author, and patriot who's made it his mission to take on the woke mob. He stands strong in defense of our constitutional freedoms and the American dream. From the great state of Ohio, please welcome Vivek Ramaswamy.
Thank you all. It's a good to be back in the state of Indiana. I grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio. I used to spend a lot of time here. My dad, came over from India to this country. We used to ask him, why'd you come halfway around the world to Cincinnati, Ohio? He said he had to be close to his sister who lived in Indiana. That, of course, begged the question of why his sister came halfway around the world to Fort Wayne, Indiana. And we joke around, it's the only U.S. state with the word India contained in the name of the state. It's good to be back. I actually came from the campaign trail here from New Hampshire. We're on a bus tour. I started this morning with an event. I'm going to be speaking at an event tonight in New Hampshire. But I came here to be with you in person, actually. I didn't want to be one of those career politicians that checks the box, speak to you by Zoom on NRA or whatever. I wanted to be here in person to deliver a personal message. I came here to tell you why I became a gun owner. I'm going to be really honest with you. Came from an immigrant family with an emphasis on math and science. I grew up in an anti-gun household. We didn't grow up hunting. We didn't go sport shooting. I could probably, if I'm being honest with you, tell you I've gone to the shooting range probably less than I can count on two hands. I like it plenty, but it's not my main hobby. I'm not going to act like something else. But the reason I became a gun owner is that the Second Amendment was made for moments like today. I'll tell you this. Somebody out there, I was walking the halls, asked me a question. He said, what kind of gun do you own? I said, I own an AR-15. He gave me a little quiz. He said, what does that stand for? I said, you don't know what it stands for? It stands for freedom. That's the real answer, actually. I'm going to read you a quote, actually. I'm going to read you a quote from the Constitution. I brought it with me just for you guys because it relates to the speech here I'm about to give you. Here's the quote. No authority has the right to infringe upon political independence or the right to abrogate individual freedoms. Sounds pretty good. That is a quote from Article 9 of the Constitution of Iran. Iran has 177 articles in their constitution. We have 10 amendments in our Bill of Rights. They have 177 of them. But you know what they don't have? They don't have a Second Amendment, which means you don't get any of those out of 177 either. They banned their citizens from owning guns. That's how it works in Iran. That's not just an exception. Let me read you a quote from a different constitution of a different nation. The unlawful detention or deprivation of freedom is prohibited. The unlawful search of persons of citizens is prohibited. Too bad that's from the Constitution of China, which will tell you that they offer the same freedoms they do here in the United States. But you know what the difference is? In China, they don't have a Second Amendment. They ban their citizens from owning a gun. That is what makes America's Bill of Rights a reality rather than just an American dream. It is the fact that we have a Second Amendment that gives teeth to every one of the other amendments in that Constitution. Even we haven't been perfect in this country. I want you to raise your hand if you know when the first anti-gun laws were passed in this country. Raise your hand if you do. 1865. You want to know when it happened? We fought a civil war in this country to give black Americans the equal protection under the law that we failed to secure them in 1776. But then you want to know what happened? Southern states passed anti-gun laws that stopped black people from owning guns. The Democrat Party then, as in now, wanted to put them back in chains. That's exactly what they wanted to do. That is how you got Jim Crow. That is how you got to Martin Luther King Jr. being denied his concealed carry permit wrongly by J. Edgar Hoover's FBI, just as the FBI today politicizes its behavior against its political opponents today. That is not right. That is not America. And you want to know who fixed that problem? It's you all, actually, who fixed that problem. The NRA is the one that got the job done by securing the rights of black Americans to own guns, that trained black Americans in this country to own guns. It was the NRA that got that done. And as a first-generation American with brown skin myself, let me tell you, thank you for what you did, because I grew up in this country in the 1990s where we enjoyed the freedoms that the Second Amendment secured. That's the other freedoms in the Bill of Rights. That's the America I know. Thank you. But the America I grew up in is not the America that I see today. Today we have a country that says you enjoy free speech rights, yet Douglas Mackey is now facing up to 10 years in prison for making a joke on the internet about Hillary Clinton. We tell you that you have property rights in this country, yet they will use your pension funds to advance political agendas, like telling gun manufacturers that they can't borrow money from banks. They will tell you that we live in a country where we elect the people who actually run the government, and yet the party in power will use police power to arrest its chief political rivals who are former presidents of the United States. That is not the America that I knew or grew up in. That is not the America that I learned to pledge allegiance to as a nation. And the only thing standing in their way is the Second Amendment, which is why they're now going after the Second Amendment itself. They tell you that now if you own a pistol brace, you got to be effectively added to a gun registry. They'll tell you they want to pressure credit card companies to track transactions to add you to that same federal gun registry. The state of Washington just last week banning the owning of AR-style rifles. Gun manufacturers not being able to borrow money from banks. They'll now tell you the state of New York, believe this or not, if you want to get a concealed carry permit, New York is now saying that you got to submit your social media profiles. Let me guess how this one's going to play out, all right? So BLM or Antifa, no problem. There's your gun. A couple of American flags, maybe you're a domestic terrorist, okay? Not very hard to predict this one. And isn't it funny that it's the very states and cities that will tell you they want to defund the police and clear the jails that'll also be the ones that stop you from actually defending yourself against the crime that their policies create. You know what's interesting is one of those cities is Austin, Texas, where Sergeant Daniel Perry was wrongly convicted for defending himself against a Black Lives Matter rioter who was pointing a rifle at him. Self-defense is not a crime in this country, and I stand with Governor Greg Abbott in making sure that he receives a pardon as he is due. Thank you. The Second Amendment is our last line of defense, and you want to know who knew that? Our founding fathers knew it. They knew more than we give them credit for. You know, the first shots that were fired in Lexington, in Concord, it was because the British monarchy came to take the guns of the colonists. They came to take the guns because they knew where the guns and bullets were stored. Think of that gun registry today. That's what the British monarchy knew. Where our founding fathers said, you know what? What the British monarchy did to us, we will create a government to make sure that government never does it to you. That is why they included the Second Amendment. In God we trust, they said. It's on the bottom of our coins. It's on the bottom of our dollar bills for a reason, because when we say in God we trust, that means that in government we distrust. That is what it means to be American. That is who we are. We are the explorers. We are the pioneers who came to this country, whose parents came to this country, whose forefathers came to this country to be free, to be the explorers, to roam the American terrain without any government telling them what they could or couldn't do. And the reason we're able to do it is because of the existence of that Second Amendment. Now, I'll tell you, you hear from the other side that, well, we have school shootings in this country. We have mass shootings. I'll tell you, there's not a person in this room that wants to see another school shooting in this country. You want to have the courage to deal with it, then step up and deal with the actual problem. We have a mental health epidemic across America. You want to do something, you can ban social media and kids under the age of 15 or 16 before you take guns away from law-abiding adults in America. You want to solve the problem, you better take away. You want to solve the drugs on the street, you want to use our military. Don't go out to protect somebody else's border. Protect our border here in the United States and end the fentanyl crisis. That is how you solve the problem. The fatherlessness epidemic. 25% of kids are born into families without a household. Black Lives Matter says they want to annihilate the nuclear family structure. You want to know what I say? The nuclear family structure is the best known form of governance to mankind. We actually need to bring back the family because that's actually what creates the shooting problems in this country. Fix the problem. Now, that mental health epidemic, where did it come from? It didn't start in a vacuum, okay? It started because we are lost in the desert. I'm going to tell you something about myself. I'm 37 years old. I was born in 1985. I'm the first millennial candidate ever to run for U.S. president as a Republican. I'm going to speak to you on behalf of my generation. I'm going to tell you something about us. I think it's true about all of us of every age, actually, in this country. We are lost. We are hungry for a cause. We're hungry for purpose and meaning and identity when the things that used to fill that purpose, like faith, patriotism, hard work, family, these things have disappeared. Wokeness, gender ideology, transgenderism, the climate cult, COVID cult have taken their place. You ask someone my age, what does it mean to be an American? You get a blank stare in response. That is the problem at the heart of our national soul. And if we can answer what it means to be an American today, that is how you stop the spread of anxiety and depression and uncertainty and self-doubt. So what does it mean to be American? It means you believe in basic ideas like merit, the idea that you get ahead in this country not on the color of your skin, as Martin Luther King said it, but on the content of your character and your contributions, which is why I'll end race-based affirmative action in America. Means you believe in the rule of law, that people like my parents who want to come to this country can come through the front door and make their contributions, but I am sorry, your first act of entering this country cannot be a law-breaking one. That is not racist or xenophobic. It is what it means to be American. It means we believe. Thank you. It means we believe in free speech and open debate, because I'll tell you this, free speech is a condition for peace in America. You tell people they cannot speak, that is when they scream. You tell people they cannot scream, that is when they tear things down. Our founding fathers knew that as well as anybody. They had a dream in this country. It's the dream that I have as a citizen, that the people who we elect to run the government in America ought to be the people who actually run the government in America, not this permanent state administrative bureaucracy that actually runs the show. And that is why we need to get in there and shut down that federal bureaucracy. I'll tell you where I'll start. Let's start with the Department of Education. 83, thank you. Let me hear it. $83 billion a year spent on God knows what, foisting race and gender ideology onto our kids. Shut that down for a quarter of that budget. I've done the math on this. You can put 3 armed security guards in every school across this nation. You tell me what's a better use of money. I've also said that we need to go further when you have an agency like that FBI that told Martin Luther King he couldn't have that concealed permit, that now tells conservatives effectively the same thing, politicizing the police state against them, you can't reform that from the top down. That is why I've said what you're not supposed to say, but I'm saying it tonight. I will say it again. We will shut down the FBI and replace it with a police apparatus that actually respects the law instead of making it up. And that apparatus can actually do the job of those background checks, which means that tonight I'm pleased to make the announcement that if I'm elected next president of the United States, we will finally shut down the ATF, an agency that is beyond repair. That is the right answer left in the country. And while we're at it, let's make constitutional carry the law of the land and finally put any ban on those efforts to actually make that federal gun registry, because they want to be able to find you just like the British monarch wanted to find the colonists. We're not going to let that happen. So the thing is, I'll say this in closing. Okay. Our founding fathers, they knew what we were doing. We celebrate today our diversity and our differences. If we get this right, we can actually stand up to the real foreign policy threats that we face. You want China not to invade Taiwan? Here's something we can do. The NRA can open its branch next time in Taiwan. And you want to stop Xi Jinping from invading Taiwan? Put a gun in every Taiwanese household. Have them defend themselves. Let's see what Xi Jinping does then. That is what it means to be an actual American. Train them how to use guns, just like we did to black people in this country after the Civil War. Taiwan, we're coming for you. We're with you, Taiwan. Put a gun in every household. China ain't gonna do a peep. Xi Jinping got nothing on us. That is what it means to be American. Do not celebrate your diversity and your differences. We need to go back and remember all the ways we're really just the same as Americans, bound by that common set of ideals that set this nation into motion 250 years ago. E pluribus unum. From many, one. You see, that is the dream that won the American Revolution. That is the dream that reunited us after that Civil War. That is the dream that won us 2 world wars and the Cold War. That is the dream that still gives hope to the free world. And if we can revive that dream over this fractious group identity nonsense, then nobody in the world, not a nation, not a corporation, not a virus is going to defeat us. That is what American exceptionalism is all about, and that is what we will revive to save this great nation. Thank you. God bless you. God bless your families. God bless the United States of America. Thank you.
All right. Let me tell you a story about our next speaker. 30 years ago, I'm having lunch at a New York hotel, and I saw our next guest across the room in a sea of people. I knew who he was, the Big Apple's biggest real estate developer, but he didn't know me. So I'm eating my sandwich when all of a sudden I see a hand reaching out to me to shake mine, and I hear, "Hey, Wayne, I'm a big supporter of your organization." And that's when a friendship began that I've cherished this day. He's never let us down and never will. Take a look at this video, please.
This sounds like political presidential talk to me, and I know people have talked to you about whether or not you want to run. Would you ever?
But, you know, I just probably wouldn't do it, Oprah. I probably wouldn't, but I do get tired of seeing what's happening with this country, and if it got so bad, I would never want to rule it out totally, because I really am tired of seeing what's happening with this country, how we're really making other people live like kings, and we're not.
Inflation in the U.S. is now at 6.5% higher in December compared to a year ago.
A state of emergency at the Texas border.
We turn to the other news this Sunday night and to the somber homecoming for the 13 brave Americans killed in Thursday's attack at the Kabul airport.
You're a golfer.
Yeah.
Why don't you just play golf? Why would you want to give up a great life and go back to that hellhole?
Because I love the country.
Donald Trump wins the presidency.
Crews break ground on a new section of wall along the U.S.-Mexico border.
We have seen month after month of solid job growth.
And we are going to make our country great again.
But you are going to be so proud of your country, because we're going to turn it around. I just told them I've got to come over and see the fake news. Let's go. We will bring back our jobs. We will bring back our borders. No challenge can match the heart and fight and spirit of America. I will fight for you with every breath in my body, and I will never, ever let you down. My fellow Americans, our movement is far from over. In fact, our fight has only just begun.
Be advised, the president is en route.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the 45th President of the United States, President Donald J. Trump.
And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. From the lakes of Minnesota to the hills of Tennessee, across the plains of Texas, from sea to shining sea, from Detroit down to Houston and New York to LA, where there's pride in every American heart, and it's time we stand and say that I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me.
Well, thank you very much. Well, thank you very much, and I'm thrilled to be back with the hardworking, God-fearing, card-carrying patriots of the NRA. Thank you very much, everybody. As a candidate in 2016, I promised you that I would save your Second Amendment from absolute obliteration. That's where it was going. And as your president, that's exactly what I did. We saved our Second Amendment, and we're going to save it for a long time to come. It's under siege, but we're going to save it for a long time to come. Forever, as far as I'm concerned, forever. And thank you very much. So I was proud to be the most pro-gun, pro-Second Amendment president you've ever had in the White House. I think that's been acknowledged. And with your support in 2024, I will be your loyal friend and fearless champion once again as the 47th President of the United States. And we have to remember, in 2016, we won the first time, and we did better the second time, got a lot more votes. A lot of bad things happened, though, didn't they, huh? A lot of bad things happened. I want to thank Wayne LaPierre and Charles Cotton for their leadership, as well as all of the people that work with them, the NRA members who make up this incredible organization, and it's really a tremendous force for freedom. That's what it is, and I'm very proud to be here. Thanks as well to Congressman Jim Jordan and his incredible wife, Polly. Where is Jim? He's around here someplace. Where's Jim? And also with them came along Isaac. You know, Isaac is a wrestler, four-time All-American. If anybody's into sports even a little bit, four-time All-American's good. And Jim was a great wrestler. A lot of people don't know that. And his daughter-in-law, Brooke, and she's about to have a baby. I said, when is the baby coming? She said, it could be today or tomorrow. I said, what are you doing here? But he's a spectacular congressman, politician, and person, and so I just want to thank Jim and the whole family. And Polly, thank you very much for being here. And somebody that I believe is going to be, and a friend of Jim, is going to be your next senator from the great state of Indiana, which I love so much. Jim Banks. Where's Jim Banks? Jim Banks. Jim. Hi, Jim. He's so popular now, he's unopposed. We like it that way, don't we? Thank you very much, Jim. You're doing fantastically well. Indiana Lieutenant Governor Suzanne Crouch, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Suzanne, where is Suzanne? Suzanne, thank you very much. And also Attorney General Todd Rokita. Todd, where is Todd? He's someplace here. I saw him. It's a big crowd, Todd. That's a big crowd. Thank you very much. Great job, Todd. Doing a great job. For 7 years, all of us here today have been engaged in an epic struggle against the corrupt forces and communist maniacs, and they're all over the place, that are absolutely trying to destroy our country. They want to take away your guns while throwing open the jailhouse doors and releasing bloodthirsty criminals into your communities. They want to abolish your borders and impoverish your families while spending your money on endless and very, very stupid foreign wars. They want to demonize patriots and persecute Christians while pushing the transgender cult on your children. Children turn 25 and they say, who did this to me? Who did this to me? How did you let this happen? They want to weaponize and interfere with our elections through the use of the DOJ, the FBI, and local attorney generals and district attorneys. That's happening to me, but we're doing very well, thank you. It's actually called election interference. That's all they want to do. I'll tell you what, if I weren't running, which isn't going to happen, or if I was doing badly in the polls, and we're not going to let that happen either. We're killing them in the polls. Are you seeing the numbers? They wouldn't be doing anything.
they'd be after somebody else. They wouldn't be talking, but we're going to show you some of the polls in a little while. You're going to be amazed. We really made a lot of progress over the last month. We put it into high gear like we did for 4 years when this country had no problems. And then COVID came in and we got it back. When you think about it, it was amazing. And we actually left it with a stock market that was higher than just pre-COVID coming in. It was an amazing job that we did. We built it twice, but there was nothing like it. I mean, there was nothing like it. What we did in those 4 years were really monumental. Rebuilt our military, largest tax cuts in history, largest regulation cuts in history. The creation of Space Force, that was a big deal. That was a big deal. And so many other things. Even right to try, I hope nobody needs it. Right to try, where you can use this advanced medical treatments that won't be approved for 5 or 6 years by the FDA, but we got them to move a lot faster, I will tell you on everything, but won't be approved by the FDA for years, and we've saved thousands and thousands of lives with right to try, but we did a lot. We did a lot. "2024 is the year that we will defeat these nation-wrecking globalists, Marxists, rhinos, and tyrants once and for all." The rhinos are in there. In many ways, the rhinos are worse because you don't know where they're coming from. You say, oh, that's a rhino. We don't like that one. At least with the Democrats, you know where they're coming from, and that's not a good place, is it? If you put me back in the White House, their reign is over, and America will be a free nation once again. And I promise you this, with me at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, no one will lay a finger on your firearms, just as took place for 4 years when I was your president. I will uphold those glorious words, shall not be infringed. You know those words? I think you know those words. You know those words? Every pledge I made to you as a candidate in 2016, I fulfilled as your president. I appointed nearly 300 federal judges to fill the bench with pro-Constitution warriors who interpret the law as written. We have great judges, a lot of great justices, almost 300, a record. I faced down vile attacks from the radical left to confirm 3 great Supreme Court justices. You know who they are: Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh, Amy Coney Barrett, all outstanding people. They don't help me much, I got to tell you that. They vote against me too much, but one of those little things in life, right? But they are outstanding people and great scholars, brilliant, and they've done a very good job. I always say, except for me, they've done a very good job. Standing before you, like, show your tax returns. That wasn't supposed to happen, right? Show your tax returns. I thought that wasn't supposed to happen. And by the way, I showed them, and you know what happened? Nothing. They said, this guy made a lot of money. Standing before you at the NRA Leadership Forum in 2019, I revoked America's signature from the globalist United Nations Arms Trade Treaty, which was a disaster. I never surrendered to the globalist left, and I always put our term, America first. Very simple, America first. I canceled Barack Hussein Obama's corrupt use of Social Security data to deny Americans their gun rights without due process of law. You know that very well in this auditorium. I fought Obama's unconstitutional effort to ban 3D printed guns. I stood up for our hunters, fishers, and sportsmen like no other president has ever done before, opening up millions of acres of federal land and rolling back Obama's assaults on hunting, fishing, trapping, and on ammunition itself. When the radical left Democrats tried to use COVID to shut down gun sales during the China virus pandemic, I proudly designated gun and ammunition retailers as critical infrastructure. Do you remember that? Little things like that.
It saved all of them. A lot of them are in the room with us today. My administration also petitioned the Supreme Court to overturn New York City's unconstitutional, so many unconstitutional things are taking place in these Democrat-run cities. But it was an unconstitutional ban on transporting handguns outside of the home. And in a landmark case last June, the court affirmed that the right to self-defense does not end when you step outside the front door of your house. And we did all of this, and we did so much more. We're working now and going to finish everything that we started. We finished a lot of it already in the 4 years, but we have things to do and we have things to finish, and we're going to get that done, and we're going to have a big, big, successful election coming up. We're going to take back that beautiful, gorgeous White House. On day one of my new term, I will stop Joe Biden's war on lawful gun owners. It's a war. What they're doing is crazy. So many things are great. Let's see, no borders, high taxes, everything they do. You know, I made a speech recently and I used this term and I didn't even know we were using it, but I used it. Every day is like April Fool's Day. We want no borders, no, you gotta have borders. We want no walls, no, you gotta have walls. Everything is like the opposite. This is April Fool's, right? We want high taxes, no, we wanna keep our taxes low. We want no guns, no, we want people to be able to protect themselves and also enjoy it as entertainment and go out and hunt and do the things that you want to do. It's almost like April Fools. Everything that they do is like, we want to have a weak military. We want our military to be woke. You know, we rebuilt the entire U.S. military. We had planes that were 48 years old. We built brand new, beautiful jets. We had planes where the grandfathers were flying the same plane as the grandson. But we rebuilt our entire military. I mean, I hate to say this, we gave $85 billion of it to the Taliban in Afghanistan in probably the most embarrassing single moment in the history of our country, which I believe led to Russia going in. They would have never done that with us, but I believe it led to that and led to a lot of bad things. That was the most embarrassing period of time, I think, in our nation's history. Not only that, the soldiers killed, 13 killed, many just horribly, horribly wounded, hurt, no arms, no legs, faces were just so badly hurt. And we left a lot of people there too. And then we gave up Bagram Air Base, a big air base, 1 hour from where China makes its nuclear weapons. You should have never given that up. And I call it a surrender. We actually surrendered. We were in great shape. You know, if you look back on that history, you're going to see something that was interesting. I dealt with Abdul. Abdul was the leader of the Taliban. And I took a lot of heat from all of those fake news people back there. And they said, why do you call Abdul? Abdul is the leader of the Taliban. They're the ones that were fighting and fighting hard. And I related to Jesse James. I say, well, Jesse James, the great bank robber, great outlaw. They said, why do you always rob banks, Jesse? He said, because that's where the money is. So when I dealt with Abdul, he's the one that was shooting our young soldiers and others with snipers and lots of other things. And I said, Abdul, you can't do that. You can't do that over the phone. You do that, you're going to suffer like nobody's ever suffered. Your whole community is going to be terrible. We'll hit you harder than anybody's ever been hit. He said, Your Excellency, why, but why do you send me a picture of my home? I said, Abdul, you're going to have to figure that one out for yourself. But you know what? We didn't lose one soldier in 18 months. Now think of it. Not one soldier was even shot at. They were at bay, and we were going to get out with pride and with dignity. We were going to take all of our equipment out. I told the generals, I want every screw, I want every bolt, I want every tank, I want every plane, I want every helicopter, I want everything out. Sir, can we leave the hangars, you know, those big canvas-covered hangars? Nope, they come out, General. Sir, I think it would be a lot easier to leave the equipment behind. This was Milley. That's when I realized he's a fool. I said, so you mean to tell me, General,
that if we have a $100 million airplane sitting there, you want to leave that, and you think that's a good thing. Leave the airplane, leave the helicopters, which they did. Leave all of this very expensive. We could just fill it up with a little jet fuel and fly it to Pakistan or fly it home. Yes, sir, I think it would be a good idea to leave it. That's where these ideas came from. Can you imagine we left $85 billion worth of equipment in Afghanistan? And I just read a report the other day that they are about the second largest seller of arms in the whole world. We sell more than they do, a little bit. But they're the second largest. Can you imagine that? Because they don't need 700,000 rifles. You know, we left behind, talking about guns, NRA. 700,000 guns and rifles, some of them the finest in the world. Some of them even are people right up here that are so wealthy, I know them, they wish they could afford guns like we left behind for the Taliban. Think of it, 700,000, 70,000 vehicles. Many of them armor-plated, costing millions of dollars apiece. We left it all behind like a bunch of fools. We're led by stupid people. And let me tell you, we've never been in such danger in our life. I believe it's the most dangerous time in the history of our country because of the power of weaponry. And I'm not talking about rifles now. You know what I'm talking about. The N-word. Can't use the N-word. 2 N-words you can't use. You can't use the nuclear word. The power of these weapons is so, and I would never talk about it. I didn't talk about it, and now it's talked about every single day, including by Putin. He goes, you know, we're a great nuclear power. He says that publicly now. He never said that when I was here, because you don't talk about it. It's too destructive. You don't talk about it. Now they're talking about it all the time, and we have somebody that has no idea what it is. We've never been in such danger. Because of our leadership, we've never been in such danger as we are right now. I will take Biden's executive order directing the federal government to target the firearms industry, and I will rip it up and throw it out on day one. That will be the first thing I do. I'll also get energy started. We're energy independent, soon to be energy dominant. I'll get that going quickly. You'll see your gasoline and your heating bills and your cooling bills and every other bill, you'll see them plummet, and you'll see inflation start to go away. I will eliminate the Biden ATF's ridiculous pistol brace rule, which orders law-abiding citizens to register or surrender guns with stabilizing braces, right? Does everybody like that, or should I forget about it? I don't know. They wanted me to put that in. I guess some people are happy with it. I don't know. To restore our Second Amendment, we will pass legislation protecting the absolute right to self-defense with federal penalties for prosecutorial abuse, like we saw just recently in Texas. You saw that, where a man was trying to defend himself, and they want to put him in jail for the rest of his life. And I will ask Congress to send a bill to my desk to lure national concealed carry reciprocity. You want protection. Just like your driver's license or your marriage license, your Second Amendment must apply across state lines. It will. We'll get it done pretty quickly, too. The Biden gun control agenda is part and parcel of the left-wing crusade to weaponize government against law-abiding citizens while letting criminals roam free. They're all over the place. I've never seen anything like it. You're afraid to walk through one of these Democrat cities. You go out for a loaf of bread, you end up getting shot. As president, I will end the weaponization of our government, including the ATF, the FBI, and the DOJ. They've weaponized our country. I will dismantle and destroy the deep state. We made a big progress. And that includes the gun-grabbing bureaucrats who are persecuting gun owners and manufacturers every single day. You people are getting persecuted by these left-wing maniacs. No longer will government target the left's political enemies. Instead, we will once again target violent criminals. I want to go after the criminals. These are mentally deranged or bad people, and we have to go after them and stop worrying about somebody that will never hurt anybody with a gun, just wants the gun for protection or whatever. We will get them behind bars, and we will keep them behind bars. They don't even, now in New York, we have a district attorney. You can kill somebody, and you don't even have to put up bail. They're out the next hour, 2 hours. It's insane, and that's true with many different cities. I don't even know, you talk about April Fool's Day. I don't even know who would think that this is good. Murderers, killers, violent animals are released onto the streets immediately. They don't even spend time in jail. The first duty of government is to protect its citizens. As an example, when you see these gangs of hundreds of young, usually young people, go and attack an department store in San Francisco and Los Angeles and Chicago, and they run in by the hundreds, and they're running out carrying refrigerators and carrying air conditioners and big stuff, big, little, everything. Fur coats, non-fur coat, everything they're carrying. They empty out the stores. And our police are incredible. But they're not allowed to do their job. They want to do their job so badly. They're standing there, they're shaking, they want to do their job. It'd be so easy to do. But they're not allowed to do their job because of these radical lunatics we have thinking they're doing the right thing. I don't even think they do think they're doing the right thing. The politically incorrect truth that no one on the left wants to admit is that violent crime is rarely committed by legal gun owners. It is committed by a brutal class of hardened, repeat criminals. That's who's doing it. In San Francisco, and who would have thought San Francisco, one of the most beautiful cities in the world? In San Francisco, murder suspects have an average of 13.9 prior arrests and 9.2 felony arrests. Think of that one. In Portland, shooting suspects have an average of 8 prior arrests and 9 criminal charges. In Washington, D.C., a place that I'm very familiar with, 4 years, when I saw tents going up, I had to take them down immediately. Immediately. You can't do that on these incredible parks and these incredible monuments, and they were putting tents up, and I take them down immediately because you can do that much easier than when you have hundreds and even thousands. You have to see what's happened to Washington, D.C. since I've left. It's horrible. Beautiful lawns with tents all over. No respect for our country, no respect for anything. But in Washington, D.C., an estimated 70% of all violent crime, and there's a lot of it involving guns, is concentrated among a group of just 500 chronic lawbreakers. Think of that. With most suspects arrested 11 times at least before being involved in a murder. They ultimately end up in a murder. And then they end up getting like a year. And sometimes less, and sometimes they're not even prosecuted. The only one they want to prosecute is Donald Trump. Let's get Trump. Let's get that son of a bitch. Let's get him. It's unbelievable, actually. These people are sick. They are lunatics. This career criminal class cares nothing about gun laws in Chicago. Just 3% of prison inmates who used a gun bought it at a store. So all of the gun owners in this room, a lot of them. Who's a gun owner? Who's a gun owner, first of all? Let's go differently. Is there anybody in the room who doesn't own a gun? Please raise your hand if you have the courage. Okay, and how many people own gun stores and sell guns? How many people in the room? Okay, good. Good, that's all good, good business. It's good. But let's be very clear, the issue is not too many guns, the issue is too many thugs, hoodlums, and savage criminals on our street. That's really what the issue is. Instead of getting these dangerous killers into jail, we have radical DAs and attorney generals, prosecutors, all across this country subverting the law to attack conservative people and religious people, evangelicals, Christians. The very same raging radical left lunatic attorney general that is coming after me in New York State is also waging war on the NRA, shamefully trying to destroy this legendary organization that's been an American institution since 1871. You know, when the NRA endorsed me in 2016 for the 2016 campaign, it was fairly early. And I do have two sons who are really good shots. I don't know if you know. Eric and Don. If they were golfers, they'd be scratch. Maybe better than scratch, actually. But they're really good. They've been a member of the NRA for a long time. And I think maybe that helped. But they endorsed me. That was considered one of the greatest things to do. That was like getting into the Wharton School of Finance or getting into Harvard or getting into a great college. That was a great thing. And they endorsed me very early. And it was a great honor. We did a great job. And they better endorse me again. Well, they're going to have some explaining to do. They'll have some explaining to do. No, I think we're in pretty good. I do believe we're in pretty good shape. And when you see the polls in a little while, you can understand that we're in pretty good shape. I've never seen such spirit as there is right now. I've never seen. And part of that, sadly, is because they are doing such a horrible job of running our country, which is really destroying our country. And I think it makes us even more popular, to be honest with you. They are doing such a horrible job. What they're doing is destroying our great country. I want to congratulate you for fighting it so bravely, all of the things that have been happening to you. The racist in reverse ran for office on the promise, I will get Trump. You ever see the commercial? I will get Trump. I'm going to get him. Didn't know anything about me. She's running for office. I said, who is that maniac? But I'm watching her campaign, and a lot of people in the race, and, you know, you get a few people that vote. Very few people, actually, it takes to get in. But she proclaimed, I look forward to going into the office of Attorney General every single day, suing him, and then going home, being very happy. I said, oh, gee, I hope she gets in. I hope she will. But she announced, what is fueling my soul right now is Trump getting Trump. And she knows nothing about me. So it's not an investigation. You're going through the same thing. It's a persecution. Just like her attacks on the NRA and just like the witch hunts against us by the Manhattan DA, the Marxist DA in Atlanta, and the guy I have watching, this guy's central casting, the guy from Washington, special prosecutor. They say special counsel. I call it a prosecutor. It's much better. They're looking at the boxes hoax. Biden has 1,850 boxes that are unaccounted for. He had many boxes in Chinatown. Classified information, many boxes. They got them out of there, but they got caught. It's called obstruction. And they sent them up to Boston, and they sit up in Boston. And then it was revealed that he got millions of dollars from the Chinese. He got millions of dollars. But he has boxes in Chinatown, boxes all over the place. They don't care about that. They only care about Trump. But they're trying to arrest their political opposition. It's really very much like the old Soviet Union. They call it Soviet style with the elections and with the interference. They're interfering with the election. That's what they're doing. It's going to be hard for them to get away with the kind of corruption they did when they had COVID, because COVID made a lot of things bad for a lot of people. But they cheated, and it's going to be hard. So now I really believe they're going the prosecutorial way. That's the route, where they use prosecutors to... Don't forget, if you're, like with me, it's sort of interesting, because my numbers have gone way up. You explained this to me. My numbers have gone way up. But other people, because you know me. You know, the truth is the American public knows me well, and they know that's not my deal. But they don't know a lot of people running for office. So if you have a young, good Republican running for office, gets a subpoena, and then they leak it out to the papers, it's impossible for this guy to win a race. But the good news is we've gone way up. So we've done something that I don't believe has ever done before, and we're going to stay there, or we're going to go even higher if we can. I'm not sure you can go higher, but we're going to go even higher if you can, because we have to save our country. They're not coming after me, they're coming after you, and I'm just sort of in the way. I'm in the way of these people. And as everybody knows, it's all because we're leading so big in the polls, not only against Republicans, but also against Joe Biden. And if you take a look, this week's Morning Consult poll I led the field by 33 points with Trump 56, DeSantis 23, Pence 5. I hope you gave Pence a good, warm approval. Because he is a nice man, if you want to really know the truth. He's a good man. And I heard it was very rough. It's a big news story. You've made news today. I don't know what you did, but you made news today with the introduction you gave. And Nikki Haley, that's a beauty. She's at 4, and Abbott's at 1. I don't think Abbott's going to run, governor of Texas. In a two-way poll of Florida last week, it was Trump 47 and DeSantis 32%. And there was another poll in Florida where Trump was at 80 and DeSantis was at 15. That's a Florida poll. In Texas, it's Trump 52%, DeSantis 20, Pence 5, Haley 4. You know, the only way we can lose is if we go prevent defense. Do you agree? Do you know what that means? Right? In football, where they're holding the team to no score, and then they go prevent the last 2 minutes, and they lose the game. We will never go prevent. But you can take a look on the screen, and you'll see some of these things posted, and they're really big polls. In Massachusetts, we're leading by, I think, like 45, almost 50 points. In New Hampshire, we're leading by a lot. In Iowa, the farmers can never vote for me. I got China to pay the farmers $28 billion for the damage that they caused. I said, you got to pay. And so you see some of these, I just thought you'd put them up. Remember in the old days, I used to always announce polls, only if they were good. I wouldn't announce them if they weren't good. If I had a bad one, I would. But when they were good, I used to drive the opposition crazy. But we're leading Biden now by a lot, 7 points, 9 points, and a 10-point, but 7 points in the last Rasmussen poll. And I am the one that they don't want to run against. That's why they're coming after me like this. If they wanted me to run, they'd say, oh, no, he is the most perfect human being we've ever seen. Instead, they put these monsters in there. They put these radical left crazy people in. Now, if they want to, they're the party of disinformation, remember that. What they say, you can usually go the opposite. They say, oh, yeah, we want to run against Trump. In the meantime, they got 5,000 prosecutors after my ass. We want to run against him so bad. We're going to run against him. That's the guy we want, Trump. By the way, please take him out of politics. Please get him out as fast as you can. Now, they're the party of disinformation or misinformation. Nobody knows the difference, but they're pretty close. It's no wonder that the far-left crazies are engaging in election interference on a historic scale. Nobody outside of this country, nobody has ever seen anything like what's happening now with the prosecutors, these Marxist prosecutors who release rapists and murderers while persecuting conservatives. On day one of my new administration, I will direct the DOJ with a very strong leader, not like Barr, not like Bill Barr. What a disaster he was. He was a rhino. He was afraid of being impeached. Please, I don't want to be impeached. So how do you not get impeached? Don't do anything. You don't do anything. Remember they were going to impeach him, and then all of a sudden, he actually said, no, he didn't see any wrongdoing in the election. My young son, very young, saw a lot of wrongdoing in the election. Did anybody in this room, can they say they didn't see any wrong? That was the worst horror show, I think, one of the greatest criminal acts ever, the election of 2020. But we will turn that around, and it'll be even bigger. You know what? It'll be even bigger. If you think about it, it'll be even bigger, be much bigger than having one. And we'll be able to do things we could have never done because they have shown so bad. In other words, they want to show us, well, they showed us. We have no energy. We have massive crime. Our military doesn't work. Nobody respects us in the whole world. I mean, there's not a leader that respects our leader. We will show them through this horrible 4 years that we're going through. The problem is we can't take any more of it because we're not going to have a country left. But we will show them that we can do things, and we'll be able to do things on crime and other elements of society. We'll be able to do things that you probably wouldn't have been able to do if you just carried it forward. So I think it's actually much bigger. This could be much bigger than if we went the more traditional route. I will direct the DOJ to investigate every radical DA and attorney general in America for their illegal race and reverse-based enforcement of the law. I will then appoint a team of warrior U.S. attorneys, and I know some great ones, including from this area, who will be the polar opposite of the Soros district attorneys. These guys, I mean, what they're thinking, who can believe? I mean, they're not stupid people. They're not stupid people. There's two things. They're either stupid or they hate our country. And I don't think they're stupid, because anybody that can cheat so well in an election, they're not stupid. That means they hate our country, and I believe they hate our country. They will be the 100 most ferocious crime fighters in American history, and I will task them with demolishing every gang, street crew, and criminal network they can find piece by piece until public safety is fully restored, and that means in Democrat-run cities. And at the top of the list is Washington, D.C. itself, which is absolutely plagued by numbers and crime that nobody's ever seen before. We've never seen anything like what's happening in Washington, D.C. Can you imagine these foreign leaders coming over from countries, and they're looking at this filth and squalor and crime in our capital? And I think we have to take it over. We have to take over management of our capital, because the people that are running, including the mayor, who did nothing about January 6th, he was the one, no, we don't need anybody, we don't need any help, along with crazy Nancy Pelosi. They did nothing. They did absolutely nothing. They were supposed to. They're in charge of it. But all of our Democrat-run cities are being absolutely ruined and destroyed as we sit here and talk. They're being ruined. I will order the ATF to stop bullying gun store owners and wanting to shut them down for paperwork errors, and instead go after drug dealers, human traffickers, and criminal cartels, which is what they should be going after. Under Biden, other countries are emptying out their prisons, insane asylums, and mental institutions, and sending them right here to the USA. Can you imagine? Prisons and mental institutions are being emptied out. I read a story not long ago where a man who takes care of a large segment of people in a mental institution in a South American country, a doctor, sounded like a great man, actually. He said he no longer has anything to do. He used to work 24-hour days. He said, all of our patients have been released into the United States of America. And this is what we have. This is what we've allowed to happen. And we can't allow this to happen, because we will not have a country any longer. We can't allow it to happen. Under my leadership, we will quickly restore the most secure border in U.S. history. We had the strongest border in history, and now we have, I think, the worst border in the history of the world, because no country, even a third world country, would allow what's happening right now to us to happen to them. The first reconciliation bill I signed for a massive increase in Border Patrol. These Border Patrol, Brandon Judd and all of his people, they're incredible, the job they do. Tom Homan, as a man that knows it, you see him on television. I call him central casting, but these two guys and all of the people that work with him, they're so good. They want to do their job. It's going to be a colossal increase in the number of ICE and Border Patrol deportation officers, following the Eisenhower model. I don't know if you know, Dwight Eisenhower was very tough on the subject. We will use all necessary state, local, federal, and military resources to carry out the largest domestic deportation operation in American history. And I will ask every state and federal agency to identify every known or suspected gang member in America. And every one of them that is here legally, we will pick them up and we will send them back to the country from which they came, as we restore safety to our streets. We have no choice. As we restore safety to our streets, we must also restore it to our schools, hardening places of learning. We have to harden our assets to protect our children against threats of any kind. Last month, our hearts were shattered by news of the monstrous attack on a Christian elementary school in Nashville that claimed the lives of 3 adults and 3 precious children. Today we wrap those beautiful families in our love and we lift them up in our prayers. We also salute the law enforcement heroes who ran into danger and took out that killer with speed and skill that made us all very, very proud. That made us all very, very proud. It's a scandal and a tragedy that year after year Democrats in Washington continue to hold common sense school safety measures hostage to their radical gun control agenda, which in virtually all cases would do nothing to prevent attacks by demented and disturbed individuals, of which we have many, and many are coming into our country, but we're getting them out. Our country has been chock full of guns for centuries, and there was no talk of massacres of school children until around the year 2000. That's when it really started. They started talking about it. This is not a gun problem. This is a mental health problem. This is a social problem. This is a cultural problem. This is a spiritual problem. Each and every one of these heinous attacks depend on the same cold-blooded calculation that the evil monster will have a window of time to act out their demonic fantasy unchallenged. They want to be unchallenged. They don't want challenge. The only way to stop these wicked acts is to ensure that any sicko who would shoot up a school knows that within seconds, not minutes, they will face certain death. They have to know that. And they won't be doing it. For this reason, I will ask Congress to repeal totally ineffective legislation that makes it harder to protect our schools and easier for criminals to face absolutely no opposition when they go in. I will also create a new tax credit to reimburse any teacher for the full cost of a concealed carry firearm and training from highly qualified experts. Who's better? Who's better? If even 5% of teachers, people that are skilled with arms, we want that, 5% were voluntarily armed and trained to stop active shooters, we would achieve effective deterrence and the problem would cease to exist. And that would be a lot of people. But these are all people that are trained and talented with firearms. For about $12 billion, we could fund armed security guards at the entrance to every school in America and also arm every willing teacher. We want to arm some of these teachers. They have to go through rigorous, or as some people say, vigorous. I like vigorous better. I don't like rigorous. They have to go through vigorous training, but they're already there. And they'll do better than anybody you could put in, and they love our children. They really love our children. If we can send $120 billion to Ukraine, then we can afford 1/10 of that amount to protect American children in American schools. We also need to drastically change our approach to mental health. Upon my inauguration, I will direct the FDA to convene, and it's going to happen quickly, to convene an independent outside panel to investigate whether transgender hormone treatments and ideology increase the risk of extreme depression, aggression, and even violence. I think most of us already know the answer, don't we? Furthermore, we have to look at whether common psychiatric drugs, as well as genetically engineered cannabis and other narcotics, are causing psychotic breaks. A lot of problems. We're having problems that we've never seen before, and people sort of think they understand why. We must also be much better at detecting warning signs of evil, disturbed young men like the one who murdered colleagues in Louisville. We cannot rest until we get to the bottom of all of the sickness that we're seeing in our country. I will fight to restore our safety, and I will also fight to reclaim our freedom. We're going to have freedom in our country. We're going to be able to walk down the street and buy a loaf of bread and come back and not be shot. To defend our Constitution and the rule of law, I will give you my word today that I will appoint rock-solid constitutional conservatives to crush the communists from our federal bench. They are communists, many of them. We did a great job. We set a record, but there's more to go. Before Election Day 2024, I will once again release the full list of names from which I select my appointments to the United States Supreme Court, so everyone can see who I'm thinking about putting there. I did that last time, and a lot of people said it made a big difference. It will be an all-star roster of young, fearless originalists in the mold of Justin Antonin Scalia, great man, and the great lion of American liberty, Justice Clarence Thomas. By the way, they're after him. Did you see it? They're after him now. They're after Clarence now. But he can take care of himself very well. At the same time, conservatives can no longer sit by and wait for the courts to save America. Our country is being plundered and ransacked by radical left barbarians who are trying to burn down every right and every liberty that we hold so dear. The next time we have power, Congress has to step up and stop this Marxist revolution in its tracks. We have a Marxist revolution going on, and I think you're starting to see it. I think you're starting to see it, and we have to stop it fast. This is what we must do to save our country. With your vote and with a Republican House and a Republican Senate, and we have a really good chance at both, I will lead the great rebirth of American freedom. We will build a future where we're free of crime and free of violence and free from fear. There's fear, where we are free from dependence on foreign countries. We're so dependent on so many foreign countries, in particular China, where we are free from the shackles of an unelected deep state, from corrupt intelligence agencies, free from war, free from poverty, free to speak our minds, and last but certainly not least, free to keep and bear arms. And in closing, I have to state, the USA is a mess. Our economy is crashing. Inflation is out of control. Russia has joined with China, unthinkable. Saudi Arabia, great people, have joined with Iran. China, Russia, Iran, North Korea have formed together as a menacing and destructive coalition. Our currency is crashing and will soon no longer be the world standard, which will be our greatest defeat in 200 years and was unthinkable just a few years ago. Unthinkable that that could happen, but it's happening before your very eyes. And we won't let it happen. With me, not even a chance. Just like Russia would have never invaded Ukraine and China would not be having even a thought of raiding Taiwan. You didn't hear about these things when I was president. If you took the 5 worst presidents in the history of the United States and added them up, they would not have done near the destruction to our country as Joe Biden and the Biden administration have done. We are a failing nation. We are a nation in decline. And now these radical left lunatics want to interfere with our elections by using law enforcement, and we can't let that happen. But with all of this being said, and with a very dark cloud hanging over our country, I have no doubt that we will together, as a group, make America great again. I have no doubt. Thank you. Thank you very much. God bless you all. God bless you.